Chapter 301 Fire Dragon Blood Lotus. Lien Changyan was both ashamed and furious, he was completely speechless. It was not that Chen Shang didn't want to compete with him, on the contrary, it was him who wasn't in the same level as Chen Shang, and this was a great insult to him. Chen Shang, seeing Lien Changyan's countenance, secretly sneered in his heart. He certainly wanted the white jade lotus seed, but unfortunately, he had signed up for the high-rank tournament. Seeing his son losing face in front of Ji Yudongchen and Wu Keiming, Lien Yingxiao sighed in his heart. He was certainly aware of his son's character. However, he felt that letting him lose face also meant nothing, this might even allow him to mature a little. This is indeed the credentials of a 5th-level alchemist. A low 5th-level alchemist at your age is very rare. I don't know which 3 low-grade profound level dans you can refine. As Lien Yingxiao returned the jade card to Chen Shang, he asked with a smile. Ji Yudongchen and the others also very much wanted to know which 3 low-grade profound level dan Chen Shang could refine, however, Chen Shang just mysterious smiled, "Please forgive me, I want them to remain a secret for the time being." Ji Yudongchen ruthlessly knocked on his head, pretending to be mysterious, "Quickly speak." Chen Shang stuck out his tongue at Ji Yudongchen, "I'm not going to speak, what are you going to do then?" Seeing Chen Zhang's rudeness towards his dean, Lien Yingxiao and Lien Changyan, both father and son, were very surprised, because Ji Yudongchen was not even angry in the slightest. It was quite clear that in the extreme martial sect, Chen Shang was treated as someone very important by Ji Yudongchen. Lien Changyan secretly clenched his teeth, he felt that he had underestimated Chen Shang, so he wanted to regain some face. He said, "I only came here to compete with the top youngest disciple of the extreme martial sect, even if I cannot fight with you in alchemy, I want to have a bout with you in strength. Chen Shang, come on, let's fight." Originally, Chen Shang was feeling regretful that he was unable to get the white jade lotus seed, but he would have never expected that the opposite party would actually take the initiative to challenge him on his own. Failing to take advantage of this son of bitch, Chen Shang obviously wanted to readily agree, however, he still looked at Lien Yingxiao's and Ji Yudongchen's complexion. Lien Yingxiao nodded his head at Ji Yudongchen, expressing his assent. After Chen Shang saw Lien Yingxiao's agreement, he laughed and said, "Not sure whether or not brother Lien is going to bet the white jade lotus seed. Little brother's hand had recently been tight. When I was learning alchemy, the dean had never sponsored me. I had to learn on my own expense and exert my utmost strength. Who told me to encounter such a stingy dean?" Chen Shang actually became a 5th-level alchemist by relying on his own hard work. Lien Changyan didn't believe a bit of it, but Lien Yingxiao was rather convinced. He knew Ji Yudongchen's character, he was indeed very stingy, moreover, he could also notice the subtle relation between Chen Shang and Ji Yudongchen. "Of course I'm going to bet the white jade lotus seed. But what are you going to use to bet? You should be aware of the white jade lotus seed's value." Lien Changyan, while speaking, took out the white jade lotus seed. This was the specialty of the Lotus Island. It was extremely useful, but its growth period was very long. It was said that it would take 7,000 to 8,000 years for it to grow up. In the Black Tortoise mysterious realm, Chen Shang had obtained a very huge hell spirit grass, which he took out right now. He laughingly said, "My hell spirit grass, efficacy is the same as your white jade lotus seed. However, my hell spirit grass is very huge, at the very least, it should be equivalent to 3 white jade lotus seeds, this is the only thing I have to bet with." The hell spirit grass was almost as big as a human head, which was quite scary. Lien Yingxiao had already heard that Chen Shang had acquired it in the Black Tortoise mysterious realm. At that time, a group of true martial realm martial artists tried to rob him, but Chen Shang had crippled all of them. Lien Yingxiao nodded his head, "This is equivalent to 4 white jade lotus seeds, Changyan, your ante is less now." Regarding Lien Yingxiao's character, Chen Shang held it with some admiration. Lien Yingxiao was not even biased with his son, and he even signaled his son to be fair, indicating his son to take out an ante of same level. Lien Changyan clenched his teeth, before taking out a fiery red lotus. Once this lotus appeared, the entire courtyard turned a lot hotter. Chen Shang didn't recognize what it was, but he was sure that this thing was obviously useful for flame cultivators. It's the fire dragon blood lotus, the most precious among the top 10 lotus seeds. It doesn't even need to be refined into a dan, just directly swallowing it would be extremely helpful to flame cultivators. Although it is a little lacking in healing efficacy compared to the white jade lotus seed and the hell spirit grass, it is still very precious. Su Meiyao immediately said, Her voice was full of surprise. Rumor has it that there was once a lotus that was soaked in the blood of the fire dragon god, which then grew on its own, and bred a large number of fire dragon blood lotus. Certainly, some of them must have been growing on the lotus island. Long Shui gulped a mouthful of saliva. It seemed that she very much wanted to go to the lotus island and steal them. Before speaking, Chen Shang took a long deep breath. Fire dragon blood lotus. The Lotus Island is truly the legendary first treasure trove of the Chenwu mainland. Today had really opened the eyes of this little brother. Admire, admire. Both Ji Dongchen and Wu Keiming were not able to recognize it, yet Chen Shang could, which made the both of them admire Chen Shang. They had heard of the fire dragon blood lotus, but they had not seen it yet. They were not even aware that it was in the Lotus Island. Good eyes. The Lotus Island's dean praised. A sliver of surprise flashed in his eyes, because for the very first time, someone had actually recognized the fire dragon blood lotus in one glance. Lien Yingxiao felt that there was a very big difference between his son and Chen Shang. Whether it was in experience or subtlety, Chen Shang was further ahead of Lien Changyan. Chen Shang had always claimed to be a little brother. He even called Lien Changyan his brother Lien, but this was not because Chen Shang respected Lu Changyan. On the other hand, Lien Changyan just called Chen Zhang's name directly. Regarding the bad attitude of Lien Changyan towards him, Chen Shang just completely disregarded it and still treated Lien Changyan like a friend. Thinking of this, Lien Yingxiao could not help but secretly sigh. Now he learned why Chen Shang could garner the respect of so many disciples in the southern wasteland. Chen Shang knew how to respect others, but his son could not do this. Of course, Lien Yingxiao also knew that Chen Shang was ruthless. If he wasn't present here, perhaps Chen Shang wouldn't even have a good look at Lien Changyan. So it is decided, we old men will act as the judge. And you brat, you can't use that blade, because even I am not sure what level of brilliant weapon it is. Ji Dongchen said, if Chen Shang used that blade, no matter how many Lien Changyan were there, they would all be slaughtered by Chen Shang. Chen Shang said with a laugh, of course not. With a weapon, I will not be able to enjoy the contest. Let me say in advance, a few days ago, I have entered the 6th level of the true martial realm, so I'm a little stronger than you. How about I let you have 3 moves? During your 3 moves, I will not attack you, I will only defend or dodge. Lien Changyan proudly said. Being able to enter the 6th level of the true martial realm at his age made him very proud of himself. Although he was already 100 years old, for true martial realm martial artists, he was just a brat. Others had given him such a face, so without a doubt, Chen Shang was going to appreciate it. He laughingly said, then little brother would like to thank brother Lien. I'm not going to be polite then. Chapter 302, The Shocking Physique. Chapter 302 The Shocking Physique. It was just comparing notes. Moreover, there were 3 powerful Nirvana realm martial artists present at the side. Chen Shang was not afraid of Lien Changyan committing any fraud, and he too would hold back a little. The courtyard in the residence could be counted as fairly large. It was enough for Chen Shang and Lien Changyan to cast their moves. But in order to not cause any big movements, Ji Dongchen, Wu Keiming and Lien Yingxiao laid down a barrier together, forming an invisible cover which enveloped the entire courtyard, lest any big movement destroy the buildings in the surrounding area. In this way, they could also keep the courtyard intact. At this time, Chen Shang had also felt that the ground had turned a lot firmer. This was all credited to the barrier laid down by the 3 Nirvana realm martial artists. With their very formidable strength, it was difficult for true martial realm martial artists to even shake the courtyard. In the small courtyard, Lien Changyan had a serious look, yet Chen Shang seemed to be laid back. This made Lien Changyan feel that Chen Shang was looking down on him, sending him into rage. He clenched his fists and decided that once Chen Zhang's 3 moves were over, he would pummel Chen Zhang's handsome face till it was black and blue. He was increasingly hating Chen Shang by the moment. Not only did Chen Shang snatched his woman, he even stole the limelight. 3 fire veins. This guy is not weak, be careful. From his appearance, he can't wait to cripple you. Long Shui giggled and said. It was not that Chen Shang had not encountered someone with 3 veins. Before, Lu Jia was killed by Chen Shang. Moreover, Lu Jia was in the 7th level of the true martial realm. As for the young and arrogant Lien Changyan, he was not even worth mentioning. The most important thing was that Lien Changyan allowed him to make the first 3 moves. The other guy's father is beside him, give him a little bit of face. Su Meiyao chuckled and said. She was worried Chen Shang would settle everything in 3 moves. By then, both father and son would be unable to show their face. Chen Shang understood the way of the world, that was why he also intended to be a little low-key. Start, Ji Yudongchen shouted. Regarding Chen Zhang's strength, he was very confident. Chen Shang was his young martial uncle as well as the pillar of his generation in the extreme martial sect. Without a doubt, he wished Chen Shang could win, so he could have a bit more prestige. With a step, Chen Shang leapt out, dragging a long chain of his silhouette. His speed was rather good, but Lien Chengyan secretly sneered instead, because he felt that Chen Zhang's speed was very slow, uncomparable to his. As Chen Shang struck his fist, a swift and violent punch impacted upon the air, bursting out with a thunderous sonic boom, striking towards Lien Chengyan's chest. Both the speed and the explosive force was quite amazing, but in the opinion of Lien Chengyan and these Nirvana realm martial artists, it was still somewhat weak. Lien Chengyan contemptuously smiled, he just leaned on one side to dodge. Chen Shang seemed to expect this response, so he quickly used a leg sweep towards his supporting leg, as if a giant axe was sweeping. If his target was a giant tree, it would definitely be cut off easily by him. When Lien Chengyan felt the threat of the leg sweep, flame surged upon one of his arms. The rich true qi from within his dantian poured into his arm, allowing his arm to have a powerful scorching capability. When he struck his fist, the flame true qi within his body burst forth, ruthlessly impacting upon Chen Zhang's leg. As the punch landed upon the sweeping leg of Chen Shang, he only felt slightly hot, that's all. However, his body still flew back, but with a backflip in the air, he firmly held his ground. Just as his feet landed on the ground, he flew out like an arrow, punching with both of his fists, straight towards Lien Chengyan's chest. Lien Chengyan crossed both his hands, blocking Chen Zhang's oncoming fists, while scorching qi burst forth from his body. As both power collided against each other, a tremor ran through the ground. From the flame true qi bursting out from Lien Chengyan, Chen Shang was sent into retreat. Since the three moves were already over, Lien Chengyan immediately started his onslaught. At the moment, his whole body was like a burning ferocious tiger, as he rushed towards Chen Shang. From beginning to the end, Chen Shang had not used his true qi, he only used his physical strength to attack. His body was in the 5th level of the Immortal and Devil body, so he wanted to try how powerful his physique was. Lien Chengyan transformed into a fiery red silhouette, with both of his hands tightly clasped together. At the same time he was swooping towards Chen Shang, an intense flames emerged upon his fists, like a burning red giant hammer slamming down, fiercely pounding towards Chen Zhang's head. Unexpectedly, Lien Chengyan acted so ruthlessly. In his heart, Chen Shang was slightly furious as he punched out like lightning. Surprisingly, Chen Shang didn't dodge, instead, he met the oncoming attack with his fists. Chen Zhang's action made Lien Chengyan become a little surprised, this was also true for Ji Yudongchen and the others. Lien Chengyan's move was rather powerful, yet Chen Shang didn't choose to dodge. An explosion rang, before the small courtyard slightly trembled. As the qi waves burst forth from the explosion which collided with the barrier, they immediately disappeared. Lien Chengyan didn't expect that Chen Zhang's strength would actually be so overbearing. With just the physical strength of his fists, he had actually firmly returned the powerful and fierce flaming strike. Chen Zhang's feet were already plunged to the ground, yet he was still standing firmly as smoke was rising above his fists. As for Lien Chengyan, he flew far away from the shock, almost falling out of the barrier. Seeing his son flying away, Lien Yingxiao's pupil fiercely contracted. His expression turned incomparably grim, because he had noticed that Chen Shang wasn't even using his true qi. Ji Yudongchen and Wu Keiming had also realized this. Last time, during Chen Zhang's and Lu Jia's battle, they both knew Chen Zhang's physique was quite strong, but they didn't expect Chen Shang would have arrived at such a step. Only using the physical strength of his fists, he actually collided with Lien Chengyan's overbearing flames. Regarding this gambling fight, Lien Yingxiao was originally very confident for his own son's victory, but now he could only sigh in his heart. He now knew the outcome was already decided. Chen Shang was intentionally concealing himself, and he hadn't even used his true strength yet. This was also to let Lien Chengyan look a little good, otherwise, in those 3 moves, Chen Shang could have easily defeated Lien Chengyan. Chen Zhang's physical strength was already comparable to Lien Chengyan, if true qi was included, without a shred of doubt, Lien Chengyan would be defeated. Lien Chengyan didn't sense anything. He had investigated Chen Zhang's fights, so he knew that Chen Zhang's most powerful attack was neither flame nor the azure true qi, it was an invisible and colorless true qi. At this point, he believed that Chen Shang had used that invisible and colorless true qi, otherwise, Chen Shang would not be able to block his strike. Lien Changyan was not too bad, he once again attacked Chen Shang. His figure flickered, before he instantly arrived in front of Chen Shang. Followed by a number of mindless punches, in the blink of an eye, countless silhouettes of fiery red fists appeared. Each and every single one of these fists were blasting towards Chen Shang, they were very quick and very powerful. Within an instant, Chen Zhang's upper garments were all shredded. However, no matter how fast his fists were, they would never land on Chen Zhang's head. It was not that they had been dodged by Chen Shang, but on the contrary, all of them were blocked by Chen Zhang's fist, so most of his fist only landed on Chen Zhang's upper body. Chen Zhang's upper body muscles were very firm, they looked very tenacious and rich in power. Coupled with the white dragon tattoo on his left shoulder, his upper body was full of masculine vigor. Even after those powerful flames incessantly struck on Chen Shang didn't even bat an eye. Moreover, he had not even released a bit of his true chi to resist, it was quite clear to what extent the dreadfulness of his physique was. Lien Yingxiao sighed lightly, Chen Shang was a freak of nature. In his 10,000 years of life, it was his first time to encounter such a powerful boy. He believed that so long as Chen Shang could live for 1 or 2,000 years, he would definitely become a legendary figure in the Qinwu mainland. At this time, Lien Changyan also realized something was wrong. After his punches struck upon Chen Shang, he could feel the slight heat and fleshy feeling from Chen Zhang's body. Beside what he felt, he didn't sense any other power. Suddenly, a thought surfaced in his mind. Chen Shang had resisted his punches with just his body. For Lien Changyan, it was something unconceivable, as such, he was not able to accept this fact. He was very confident in his strength, but with the other party just using his body to resist, all of Lien Changyan's confidence collapsed. Chapter 303, 10,000 Years Spirit Milk. Chapter 303 10,000 Years Spirit Milk. Lien Changyan attacked even more ruthlessly, lest his waning confidence would disappear. As Lien Changyan's fierce and overbearing flaming fists intensively bombarded on Chen Shang like rain, Chen Shang felt a little burning pain, but he was still enduring it like before. He only used his fists to guard his head, not allowing any of Lien Changyan's attack to pass through. However, Lien Changyan still relentlessly tried to strike his head, and if even an attack passed through, it would be very deadly. As such, Chen Shang got a little angry, he suddenly reached out his hand and grabbed a hold of Lien Changyan's fiery fist. As true chi suddenly surged out from his dantian, Chen Zhang's grip became even more powerful. Lien Changyan's fist was suddenly grabbed by Chen Shang, which made him startled. Chen Shang so easily took hold of his fist, not to mention that his grip was very tight too. No matter how much strength Lien Changyan exerted, he was not able to break away. Just when Lien Changyan intended to punch another fiery fist towards Chen Zhang's head, Chen Shang coldly snorted as he began to vigorously knead his fingers. Crack, crack. Soon after, only the sounds of bone-breaking rang, which was then followed by the ear-piercing howls of Lien Changyan. His hand had been broken by Chen Shang, which made Lien Changyan even more furious. On his freed fiery fist, the flames became even hotter and more turbulent as it increased in size. His fist was like a meteorite burning in flames as it blasted towards Chen Zhang's head. Chen Shang was still grasping Lien Changyan's broken fist, and at this moment, Chen Shang vigorously hurled Lien Changyan, tossing him out of the barrier. Lien Changyan's ruthless means had finally made Chen Shang completely furious, causing true chi from his whole body to rise. And as that powerful true chi was released, it surged into all his of limbs and bones. Using true chi had made Chen Shang even more powerful, but it also gave him a light slaughter chi. Lien Changyan yelled, before rushing towards Chen Shang again. His handsome face was now a little hideous, hatred was brimming in his eyes, as though he could not wait to kill Chen Shang. From his body, terrifying flames gushed out, he had already lost his sanity. White Tiger Divine Fist. With the rising anger in Chen Zhang's heart, an intense slaughter chi covered the entire sky. Along with an intense onslaught of both his fists, numerous silhouettes of tiger head fists like furious waves in the ocean emerged. They shook the air in the surroundings as they shot raving chi waves one after the other, which were then followed by earth-shattering shadow fists, pounding towards Lien Changyan. In an instant, Lien Changyan's body had been pounded by more than 100 fists, breaking many of his bones and causing him to spat out blood. Just as he wanted to continue attacking, Lien Yingxiao sighed and said, "Little brother, please give me face, show some mercy." After Chen Shang heard this, he immediately withdrew his fists as the slaughter chi covering the courtyard suddenly disappeared. As for the furious Lien Changyan, he had been pressed down by an invisible power by Lien Yingxiao. Senior, the outcome is yet to be decided. Chen Shang said. If the battle would just stop here, he wouldn't win the bet. This was what he was most concerned about. You win. Changyan, take out the thing and give it to him. Lien Yingxiao, in the blink of an eye, appeared in front of Lien Changyan. With a strict look in his eyes, he glared at Lien Changyan. Noticing that his father was angry, Lien Changyan knew that he was wrong, but in his heart, he was still extremely reluctant. However, sensing the strict aura of Lien Yingxiao, he didn't dare to say anything. He immediately took out the white jade lotus seed and the fire dragon blood lotus, then handed them over to Chen Shang. After Chen Shang acquired the ante, a grin appeared on his face as he repeatedly expressed his appreciation, which was a huge contrast to his appearance from a moment ago. Lien Yingxiao hastily educated his son and quickly left after saying goodbyes with Ji Yu Dongchen and Wu Kaming. After Lien Yingxiao and Lien Changyan, father and son, left, Chen Shang asked in a low voice, will the Lotus Island's dean hate me? Though he will not, his son will for sure. Ji Yu Dongchen laughingly replied as he patted Chen Zhang's shoulder, you brat once again made a killing, being a youth is truly nice. When I was at your age, I was just a small true martial realm martial artist. Chen Shang coughed then pretentiously said, in the absence of other people, you must call me martial uncle. Ji Yu Dongchen's smile immediately disappeared as he lightly scoffed. After triumphantly laughing a few times, Chen Shang quickly left. Wu Kaming laughed and said, if not for the young martial uncle, Lien Yingxiao would have certainly showed off here. He had actually spoiled his son to this extent. Anyway, it is still all good because he is alive. Ji Yu Dongchen nodded his head and said, only the young martial uncle would never be afraid of anyone. After all, isn't he that madman's second apprentice? Isn't our teacher a madman? After Chen Shang acquired the good things, he must naturally go and show off in front of his empress. However, just as Chen Shang merrily arrived at the divine weapon shop, he discovered that Lu Menger had already returned to the divine weapon Heavenly Empire, because she had some matters to attend to, which required her presence. Not being able to inform her that he had obtained some good things, Chen Shang was a little disappointed. He came to the Danxiang Tower and inquired about the alchemy tournament. Although the rewards were rich, they still didn't count as anything for him. He only wanted to win in order to prove his own strength. Though the details of tournament were still yet to be announced, the rewards had already been announced. However, only the champion could get the rewards. The reward for the low-rank tournament was 2 drops of 10,000 years spirit milk. So long as a single drop of the spirit milk was dropped on a spirit herb, it would accelerate its growth. That was why it was also a very precious commodity. Many people guessed that in the Danxiang Tower, there could be tens of thousands years spirit milk, allowing them to accelerate the growth of some rare and precious spirit herbs. For the middle rank tournament, the reward was 5 drops of spirit milk, and for the high rank tournament, it was 10 drops of spirit milk. As for its specific usage, Chen Shang still didn't know, but in the announcement, it was specified that after winning the reward, Danxiang Taoyuan would have a separate meeting to inform the winner how it could be used. For the 10,000 years spirit milk, Chen Shang was very curious, because, even Long Shui and the other girls, these extremely experienced girls, all had not heard of it. In the blink of an eye, 10 days passed. In these past few days, Chen Shang had been adjusting his state. Moreover, from time to time, he would visit the divine weapon shop to check whether Lu Menger had returned or not. If Lu Menger wouldn't be able to watch his tournament, it would make him extremely disappointed. The alchemy tournament was going to begin tomorrow, which was going to be held in 3 different tournament stages in a huge square near the Danxiang Taoyuan. The reason there were 3 different stages was because a large audience would come to watch the tournament, and in order to allow everyone to watch the tournament, the hosts could only build a giant stadium. Although it would affect the alchemists greatly, but in a similar fashion, it would still allow for the measurement of an alchemist's true level. Chen Shang lived in Ji Yu Dongchen's residence. It was late at night when suddenly, he was awakened because he felt an approaching danger. Just as he opened his eyes, he was almost scared to death, before his mouth was gagged. Damn woman, you scared the shit out of me. Chen Shang shouted in his heart. His eyes were full of fury as they glared at the masked Elder Dan. He didn't expect that Elder Dan would actually appear in such a way. Young martial uncle, this is the colorless spirit grass, 5-leaf grass and 5-colored lotus seed. All this time, I went to find the herbs for the 5 elements true elemental Dan for you, Now I will go into closed-door training for a long period of time. You do not need to look for me. Right, this is the list of participants for tomorrow's high-rank tournament. There is a lot of information on it. There is no harm in looking. Goodbye, and don't tell senior brother and junior brother about my arrival. Elder Dan stuffed a storage pouch in Chen Zhang's hand, before quickly flying out of the window and disappearing into the night. Chen Xiang was still in a daze from fear. While looking at the storage pouch in his hands, he heaved a long breath. He secretly felt grateful to Elder Dan. She had actually so zealously helped him gather the herbs. However, he still couldn't understand why she was being so elusive. Chapter 304, Flame Tournament. Chapter 304 Flame Tournament. Elder Dan left as suddenly as she arrived. Chen Xiang looked inside the storage pouch and was dazed. There was the exquisite colorless spirit grass. It appeared as if it was directly carved out of crystal, containing the 5 elements spirit chi inside. Moreover, all the 5 elements spirit chi had been fused together into a colorless spirit chi, which seemed extremely similar to his universal true chi. The 5-leaf grass had 5 different color blades growing, inside happened to be 2 pieces of them. The same was true for the colorless spirit grass and 5 color lotus seed, all of which had been provided to him by Elder Dan. This moved Chen Xiang very much. He decided that, after he went back, he would send a little gift to Elder Dan. Although she was a mysterious woman, Chen Xiang was gradually getting a very good impression of her. As the sun rose, sunlight shone upon the land, giving the starting signal for the alchemy tournament in the Fragrance City. Chen Xiang was in this high-rank tournament. He was also the most youngest to ever participate in it, and the only alchemist who had just advanced into the 5th level. There were not many participants for the high-rank tournament, but the audience was a completely different matter. There were countless people watching this competition. The tournament stage was completely surrounded. Upon the stage, there were only 30 tabaret, clearly implying there were only 30 participants. As for the participants for the low-rank and middle-rank tournament, their count was well over 100, which was why their tournament stage was also very big. His mother, hasn't younger brother Chen arrived? How come I can't see him? Zhu Rong depressingly said. The whole square was completely packed. It could also be described as the sea of people. This tournament was the finale of the Danxiang Taoyuan Grand Meeting, so the many people present here was not strange at all. Yun Xiaodao, Xu Weilong, the Lai family brothers and even Lian Mingdong were present. They were all squeezed into the crowd and stopped to look at the middle-rank tournament stage. The participants were all in their place, yet Chen Zhang's figure was nowhere to be found. Yao Haisheng and Wu Qianchen were both at the middle-rank tournament stage. In particular, the young and beautiful Wu Qianchen, an alchemist as stunning as capable of leading a nation to its downfall, garnered many people's attention. Alchemistresses were extremely rare, but they were often extremely outstanding, such as the Dean of Danxiang Taoyuan and Elder Dan of the extreme martial sect. Both were alchemistress, and topmost alchemists within the Qinwu mainland. You group of idiots, quickly look at the high-rank tournament stage, that brat is over there. Hao Dongqing yelled. His shout had not only been heard by Yun Xiaodao and the group, many others had heard it too. They all looked at the high-rank tournament stage at the same time. Very soon, Chen Zhang's tall and sturdy figure had been found by the crowd. Chen Xiang was actually on the high-rank tournament stage. This information went from 1 to 10, 10 to 100, and quickly spread among the crowd. All of a sudden, the entire tournament square had burst into a clamor. One by one, exclamations burst out from the crowd because Chen Xiang was standing upon the high-rank tournament stage. In other words, Chen Xiang was at least a 5th-level alchemist. With his age, becoming a 5th-level alchemist came as an extreme shock to Yun Xiaodao and the group. I can't help but admire the young man, but he is not wise in doing this. Yes, it seems he has just become the 5th-level alchemist, and on the stage there are both 5th and 6th level. He had just advanced into 5th-level alchemist, and that is pretty unfavorable for him. Not a single alchemist participating with him hasn't been famous for many years. He really is too young. Haha, the middle-rank tournament participants should be laughing. They have one less powerful opponent. Quote. Listening to the people next to them, Yun Xiaodao and the others knew, it was very unfavorable for Chen Xiang to participate in the high-rank tournament. They also secretly blamed Chen Xiang for being so reckless. A strange brilliance flashed through Wu Qianchen's eyes. Looking at Chen Zhang's back, she slightly sighed in her heart. Originally, she believed she would be able to compete with Chen Xiang here, but she was still behind by a step. Yao Haisheng sighed too. he didn't expect his little teacher to actually be so monstrous, to suddenly have reached the position of a 5th-level alchemist. Lien Chengyan was also here. Although he had been injured by Chen Shang, his injuries were not very serious. His father was dean of the Lotus Island, he had no lack of wonder drugs, so within a few days he had completely recovered. Noticing Wu Qianqin, such stunning beauty, was actually looking at the faraway Chen Shang in admiration, he felt even more jealous. In his heart, he coldly snorted. Not long ago, inside the extreme martial sect, rumor had it that Chen Shang and Wu Qianqin were a couple. So long as one was concerned about Chen Shang, all of them knew this matter. Lien Chengyan thought of this, and ruthlessly clenched his fists. He could not wait to break Chen Zhang's head. Yun Xiaodao and the group found a place where they could watch both the middle rank and the high rank tournament simultaneously. At this time, Mrs. Li also arrived at the high rank tournament stage to announce the first round of the tournament. The flame is most basic for an alchemist. Fittingly, the first round is a competition of flames. A test to see whose flames are more formidable, and whose ability to control their flames is higher. When Mrs. Li was continued to talk, a few people walked up on the stage, and placed a thigh thick and half the size of a man, candle on the wide tabaret in front of everyone. These candles placed in front of you have some rice grain-sized red ice pieces. You must burn the candle and then take out those small red ice grains, and place them in the ice box next to you. Inside each candle, there are 100 ice grains. When it is the time to calculate who passes this round, those who has taken out the least number of red ice grains will be eliminated. Chen Shang released his divine sense, looking very thoroughly at the candle in front of him. There were indeed special ice grains inside it. Under normal circumstances, they were very difficult to melt, but if came in contact with flames, they would then immediately evaporate. In each round of the high rank tournament, 5 participants were going to be eliminated. In middle rank tournament, 15 participants per round, and 20 participants per round in the low rank tournament. What Chen Shang could determine was that, although there were many rounds, the first round was a piece of cake for him. The tournament had yet not begun, which was to allow the participants to make preparations. Chen Shang took a look at the participants. Last night, Elder Dan had given him information about these people. Except for a few rare exceptions, the others were rather famous alchemists in the Chenwu mainland. Among the participants, the Danxiang Taoyuans and the Lotus Islands alchemists accounted for half the total competitors. Danxiang Taoyuan had 8 people attending, while the Lotus Island had 7. Some of the others were the alchemists nurtured by the True Martial Sect, Beast Martial Sect and the Proud Sword Sect, all of whom were 6th-level alchemists. After looking the information of these people, Chen Shang realized there was only a single 5th-level alchemist on the stage. Moreover, only a low-level one, which was him. He knew why these people did not place him in their eyes, for they were all 6th-level alchemists. They were simply not afraid of a low 5th-level alchemist. Chen Shang looked at the non-reputed 6th-level alchemists, and according to the information, these people were likely to have been sent by the free Immortal Sea. It's time, start. Mrs. Li announced the start of the round. The entire field quieted down, everyone intently watching the alchemists up on the stage. These alchemists in everyone's hearts were a high and mighty existence, but now they could so closely look at them competing. Basically, everyone was feeling excited and exhilarated. The first round of the tournament could be said to be difficult yet not difficult, simple yet not simple, for it was not only a test of flames. It was at the same time was also a test of one's divine sense and their control over flames. After the flames were released, numerous alchemists came to realize that the candle was not ordinary, they were very difficult to melt. If they increased the temperature of their flames, they would have to be worried about its effect on those delicate red ice grains. This was a cause of a large headache to many. These people could neither continue burning the candle, nor could they stop their flames, for both paths would result in elimination. Only those who had great confidence over their flames and divine sense dared to keep burning the candle down. Chen Shang was also one of them, his flames were the most fierce. Under the heat of his flames a group of people began to sweat, and these people were also sweating for Chen Zhang's courage. Such a reckless method, was he not afraid of burning the ice grains inside the candle? Chapter 305, Perfect Clearance. Chapter 305 Perfect Clearance. Seeing that some alchemists still hadn't released their flames, Mrs. Li shouted, "Once the sand inside the sandglass is drained, this round will be finished. If one have not completed the task, it will count it as your forfeiture, and you will be eliminated." Chen Shang looked at the hourglass, and discerned that it would take around half an hour to completely drain. The time was rather tight, while the candle was very difficult to burn. Not to mention, they had to be very careful while burning the candle, or else the ice particles inside would be burned. Among the 3 tournament stages, only the alchemists on the high-rank tournament had completely released their flames, while the group of alchemists in the other 2 stages were hesitating. That being said, no one wanted to be out of the tournament by not competing. So many alchemists altogether released their true chi flames, turning the entire tournament stadium into a giant steamer. Many among the audience could not bear the sudden intense heat. Everyone's body was drenched in sweat, only those decent martial artists were able to withstand this sudden change with their true chi. Each and every participant cautiously burned their candles, some burned bit by bit from the surface, some from the sides, but all of them released very little flames and burned very carefully. Chen Zhang's burning method was unique and astonishing. Much to everyone's surprise, he had completely wrapped the candle within his flames. In addition, his flames were very formidable. The alchemists on the same stage with him were all having a little difficulty withstanding the temperature. At the same time, they were also shocked by Chen Zhang's frightening flames. However, they believed the way Chen Shang was doing things would result in all the particles being destroyed in the end. Chen Shang glanced at the other 2 tournament stages. He noticed the difference between heat resistance of the candle on the 3 tournament stages. The heat resistance of the candle on the high-rank tournament stage was obviously the highest. Hua Shangyu sat in front of a low window with a teacup in her hand, and was very leisurely watching from the 20th floor of the Danxiang Tower. Looking at Chen Zhang's flames, she said in a low voice, "This brat is always so reckless. Even with fire spirit, if he dares to burn in such a reckless way, wouldn't he just lose?" Lu Menger walked in, and sat next to the low window. She took a sip of the tea, before she laughed and said, "How about we make a bet?" "Never, this brat has too many variables." Hua Shangyu with a charming smile, and touched Lu Menger's face, "Sister Menger, you are definitely going to bet on your darling winning, am I right?" The noble and dignified Lu Menger was just like a normal girl in front of Hua Shangyu and blushed from shame, before she tenderly scoffed and said, "You must be jealous." Lu Menger deceived Chen Shang into thinking that she had returned to the divine weapon Heavenly Empire. This was in order to avoid Chen Shang. She knew if she became any closer with Chen Shang, both of their feelings would become deeper. Maybe, one day, things would go too far. Not to mention, her mind was currently in chaos, as Chen Shang was the love interest of both her apprentices. She has been very conflicted about this matter. But first, Lu Menger needed to cross the Nirvana tribulation, only then could she deal with these complex feelings. Also, if she failed in crossing her tribulation, she didn't want to make Chen Shang mourn at that time. This would also leave a shadow in Chen Zhang's heart, which rather be detrimental, especially when he was going to cross the Nirvana tribulation. "How long are you planning to hide?" Lu Menger asked. She was obviously aware of some of Hua Shangyu's secrets, which Chen Shang also wished to know. "Wait till he is formidable than me, I'll tell him then." "Menger, maybe by then we will become sisters. This brat's charms are too much, my heart's is a bit shaken, hey hey." Hua Shangyu tenderly laughed and teased. Being busy in tournament, Chen Shang naturally didn't know that 2 beauties were talking about him. Although he was looking serious, once in a while he would sweep his gaze down the stage and glance at those beauties drenched in fragrant sweat. In particular, those with good figures, he would always take a second glance. Which made him even more excited for the tournament. One by one, all the participating alchemists were engrossed in burning the candle. Only Chen Shang happened to be half-hearted in his efforts. For him, the tournament was not challenging enough. During the alchemy, the control over flames required to be even more demanding. That was why this tournament was the same as a game in his eyes. The red ice particles in the candle had already been locked by Chen Zhang's divine sense, and he simply controlled the flames as he desired and mixed in with them. These flames were like a part of his body, he controlled them freely as he wished. Among the 3 tournament stages, Chen Zhang's performance was very eye-catching. Not only the flame he had released was very vigorous, the flames had completely wrapped the whole candle. At a single glance, it was rather conspicuous. Suddenly, the flames in front of Chen Shang disappeared. The entire audience immediately burst into clamor. At the same time, the crowd burst one by one into exclamations, because the candle was nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, many rice grain-like red ice particles were suspended directly in front of Chen Shang. With Chen Zhang's control, these ice particles all fell into the special ice box. After the candle had been wrapped around in Chen Zhang's flames for quite some time, it all just suddenly disappeared, just like a magic trick. Which was followed by emergence of many red ice particles, taking everyone's breath away in astonishment. 100 particles. Mrs. Li personally came over and confirmed the total amount. She swept with her divine sense to confirm the count once again in disbelief. She too had a look of astonishment on her face. Chen Shang was the fastest one to complete, but also perfectly cleared the first round. This made other alchemists feel a great pressure. They all believed that there was something wrong with Chen Zhang's brain before, but now they found out, they had been the snobs all along. Chen Shang sat on the tournament stage, and watched over the middle-rank tournament stage, where his apprentice Yao Haisheng, and also his good friend Wu Qianchen were present. Both of them were among the finest alchemists of the extreme martial sect. Especially Wu Qianchen, her progress had been extremely alarming. Although she happened to be third-level alchemist, she could already refine true elemental Dan. According to Chen Shang's estimation, in 1 or 2 years, she might be able to advance to the 4th-level alchemist. After Wu Qianchen learned from Elder Dan how to hide her flame's color, she didn't expose her blue flames at all. At this point, her flames had shamed more than 100 alchemists on the middle-rank tournament stage, both young and old. Due to her having a flame spirit, her flames were considered noble among flames. This was why the flames released by Wu Qianchen happened to have a different aura from the general populace. As for Chen Zhang's heavenly sun fire, it was much better than Wu Qianchen's. Both in its noble aura, and in its royal aggressiveness. Worthy of the first beauty of the extreme martial sect, her figure is in same level with Sister Menjie, Hua Shangyu, Sister Yu, and Sister Meiyao, not to mention she is more than 30 years old, even her mature charm is. Chen Shang looked at Wu Qianchen's exquisite tender figure, and indulged in a train of thoughts. What was surprising was, not long after Chen Shang had completed, Wu Qianchen also made her candle disappeared, before taking out 100 red ice particles. She too had perfectly passed the round, much to everyone's surprise. Both of them turned out to be disciples of the extreme martial sect. Once Wu Qianchen was finished, she looked towards Chen Shang, and naughtily stuck out her tongue at Chen Shang. She then revealed a sweet smile, which was a very beautiful sight to behold. Noticing Wu Qianchen and Chen Shang exchanging flirting glances with each other, Lian Chengyan felt hate to the very drop of his blood. Although he had played with a lot of beautiful women, those women only had appearance and figure, and didn't have any position. All of them were people who were attracted to his wealth, which didn't give him any sense of conquest. High and aloof beauties like Shui Shenxian and Wu Qianchen were the most tempting kind of treasure to this young lord. Chapter 306. Second Round. Chapter 306 Second Round. Regarding Wu Qianchen's speed, Chen Shang was not surprised at all. She had the blue star fire spirit, and fire spirit users in regards with the manipulation of flames and its temperature were many times better than regular alchemists. As the sand in the sandglass trickled down bit by bit, the atmosphere on the stage became very tense. There were some alchemists whose candles still didn't melt, in particular on the low-rank tournament stage, where this occurrence was the most common. The level of the alchemists on the high-rank tournament stage was the definitely highest. All of the alchemists were able to take out those red ice particles. As the final grain of sand finished its journey down in the sandglass, the first round was declared finished. Next, the inspection of each and every red ice particle the alchemists took out began. Those who were unable to melt the candle or had taken out the least amount of the ice particles would be eliminated. On the high-rank tournament stage, Chen Shang was in the forefront in the amount of ice particles taken out, not to mention he had already finished early. The least amount of ice particles taken out in the high-rank stage was still 70 ice particles. In accordance with the rules of first round, the 5 participants who had taken out the lowest amount were eliminated from the high-rank tournament. Some of the 6th-level alchemists felt very envious of Chen Shang. Simultaneously, some of the alchemists felt rather sorry. A lowly 5th-level alchemists could actually pass through the first round, however, they were eliminated. This made them feel extremely uncomfortable in their hearts. Their largest amount of eliminated participants were from the low-rank tournament. There were many alchemists who were unable to take out a single ice particle. All of a sudden, more than half of the participants had been eliminated. From this point of view, most of the participants' level of control was not enough on the low-rank tournament stage. Next was the second round, and according to the common sense, this round was going to be harder than the previous one. Now the second round will start. As Mrs. Lee's voice resounded, a few people walked up on each tournament stage and then placed a ton of dried herbs on the empty space on the tournament stages. These herbs appeared to be of very poor quality. Some of the herbs had aged to the point where they were not far off from death. Some of the herbs were even rotten. In the eyes of these alchemists, all of these herbs were nothing but garbage. I know these herbs are just trash in your eyes, but in second round of the tournament you need to use these herbs to refine out dans. Then, in accordance with the quality, the number of dans refined and the time taken, you will be judged. In the high-rank tournament, the 5 participants with the lowest end result based on the quality, number of dans refined, and the time taken will be eliminated. Let the second round begin. Mrs. Lee took out an hourglass. Although the sand was being drained very slowly, it was quite clear there was not much time, even less than the first round. Chen Shang just glanced over those rotten herbs before he recognized that the majority of the herbs were part of the recipe for the true elemental dan. It could be seen Danxiang Taoyuan had planted many sets of herbs for true elemental dans. However, one of the main ingredient, the spirit crystal essence, was missing. In the eyes of many alchemists, this was an indispensable ingredient for refining the true elemental dan. Of course, even if it was not available, it was still possible to refine the dan. However, the number of dans would be lessened, not to mention the quality would also fall. When Chen Shang had refined the true elemental dan previously, he had actually not used the spirit crystal essence. This was because he cultivated the black tortoise true qi, and could produce a kind of liquid which could act as a substitute for the spirit crystal essence. Chen Shang walked over, and picked a few rotten herbs. The main ingredients of the true elemental dans were the Zanzhen grass, the 10,000 years old spirit fruit, spirit crystal essence and the grand elemental nut. Besides the spirit crystal essence, the other 3 ingredients happened to be in the pile of herbs. However, they were all very rotten, and lacked in spirit qi. In order to make up for the inadequate herbal spirit qi, Chen Shang could only rely on his experience and increase the amount of ingredients. On the other stages, all the other alchemists who picked those garbage herbs were lamenting. Even if some alchemists used better herbs, they would not necessarily be successful in refining, not to mention using this kind of garbage herbs. This was why this round was a huge challenge for these alchemists, no matter if they were high-level or low-level alchemists. The dan Chen Shang had refined the most was precisely the true elemental dan. Although these herbs were a bit rotten, it still didn't pose any great difficulty for him at the moment, which left him quite disappointed. Chen Shang was the first one to select the herbs, while the other alchemists were actually fighting with a bunch others to gain some slightly better herbs to have a slightly higher chance in their refinement. There was no lack of rotten true elemental dan's herbs, yet there was no one selecting them, simply because there were no spirit crystal essences. Noticing Chen Shang picking the true elemental dan's herbs, Mrs. Lee reminded, "Young Master Chen, during the alchemy process, you cannot privately add your own herbs." On the stage, a sharp look flashed through the eyes of several old men. These individuals were all at least a 6th-level alchemist. No matter who it was, whatever they were doing would all be clearly noticed under their eyes. Chen Shang picking the true elemental dans was not hidden from them. Mrs. Lee was worried about Chen Shang not being aware of the rules, and be eliminated in such a way. Chen Shang smiled, "I know, but while refining the true elemental dan, the spirit essence crystal is not necessarily needed. I had never used this kind of thing to refine the true elemental dan before anyway." Mrs. Lee was a little taken aback. The other alchemists also looked at Chen Shang with an inconceivable look in the eyes. If the spirit crystal essence is not used, the number of dans refined out would definitely be less, not to mention it would have an adverse effect on its quality. Wasn't this a waste of the true elemental dan's herbs? Wu Qianqin was same as Chen Shang. She too chose to refine true elemental dan. Chen Shang had once guided her in refining the true elemental dan. This allowed her to learn a unique way to gather spirit qi, and the technique to transform the spirit qi into liquid form. This could replace the use of spirit crystal essence, and she was proficient in this process already. The same was true for Yao Haisheng. After all, he was Chen Zhang's apprentice. Chen Shang would certainly pass on some of his alchemy techniques to him. Even now, no one else was choosing the true elemental dan herbs, which allowed all of them to find relatively better herbs very easily. Chen Shang sat down cross-legged on the ground, and took out the brilliant flame dragon furnace. He placed it on the tabouret, and waited for Mrs. Lee and those old men to inspect. He began processing the herbs in the meantime. He removed the dead parts of the herbs, got rid of the unwanted peel, and then quickly rinsed them. In the blink of an eye, Chen Shang had already finished processing the herbs. His movements were very skilled and quick. While the other alchemists were still picking the herbs, he had already placed his herbs inside the alchemical furnace. Chen Shang didn't have any spirit crystal essence. The several old men supervising the tournament and Mrs. Li on the stage had all carefully examined Chen Zhang's alchemical furnace, and they didn't find anything hidden. They just couldn't believe that Chen Shang was actually going to refine the true elemental Dan without any spirit crystal essence. They were sure even if he was successful in refining, it would have a very large impact on the quality and quantity. On the high-rank tournament stage, the highest rank herbs in that heap of garbage was for refining the true elemental Dan, the rest were for some middle-grade spirit-level Dans, like martial elemental Dan, melting poison Dan and so forth. If it was not for the lack of the spirit crystal essence, the other alchemists would definitely choose to refine the true elemental Dan. The time was very short. The majority of the alchemists picking the herbs were all aiming for perfection, but now they could only pick some rotten herbs before hurrying off to their furnaces. Otherwise, once the time was finished, they would be eliminated. Some of the alchemists were already regretting. If they had chosen to refine the true elemental Dan at the beginning, maybe they would have saved a little more time overall. Although they would have refined poor quality true elemental Dans, or maybe just refined a single true elemental Dan, it was still better not being able to refine anything within the stipulated time. The alchemists of the high-rank tournament were all feeling they had committed a major mistake. It was even more true for the alchemists on the other stages. The majority of the alchemists here were attending Danxiang Taoyuan's alchemy tournament for the first time. It was a lot harder than they had imagined. Chapter 307, Peerless Genius. Chapter 307 Peerless Genius. The highest level of alchemist in the tournament were only at the 6th level. 7th level and above alchemists were scarce in number. Holding a tournament for them didn't make any sense. Hua Shangyu observed Chen Zhang's alchemical furnace exuding red light said, "This brat's furnace is definitely nothing ordinary. Although I've examined it, I didn't find anything strange." "Menger, you're a refiner, can't you tell anything?" Lu Menger shook her head. "I can't discern anything, though the alchemical furnace is indeed extremely strange. If I could examine it for a while, I might be able to see something." "This little rascal's alchemy is also amazing. Is it because of the furnace?" Hua Shangyu mysterious smiled. "You'll find out in the next round. I'm also extremely curious whether it is all due to the alchemical furnace or not. That's why the next round was specially designed for him." Chen Shang was very leisurely refining the Dan. For him, it was no different than refining the true elemental Dan with better spirit herbs. By relying on the brilliant flame dragon furnace, his speed in alchemy was monstrously fast. According to his expectation, he would be left with a lot of time after he was finished. Even if he didn't rely on the brilliant flame dragon, he would still be able to pass this round using an ordinary furnace, for he still had the powerful heavenly sunfire spirit. Chen Shang had become extremely familiar in refining the true elemental Dan. Last time before the auction was about to begin, he had went into seclusion, and mind-numbingly refined the true elemental Dans. At that time, refining had almost made him vomit blood. At present, refining the true elemental Dan was just like a game, even if he was using poorer quality herbs for refining. Chen Shang was quickly finished. Within his brilliant flame dragon furnace appeared 5 true elemental Dans. That being said, he had yet to announce that he had finished refining. He was waiting for the others. All the other alchemists were still concentrating in their alchemy, and he didn't want to disturb others. Moreover, during the tournament, he had to follow the relevant rules. Chen Shang glanced at a middle-aged man on the high-rank tournament stage. From the information provided by the elder Dan, this middle-aged man was the most powerful and talented alchemist in this bunch. He was a young 6th-level alchemist from Danxiang Taoyuan. Chen Shang then looked at an old man with a goatee. This old man was an alchemist from the Proud Sword sect. He too was a 6th-level alchemist. He looked around for a while, and found that the level of these alchemists was very high. Whether in regards with flames or their divine sense, their performance had left him secretly astonished. If it was any ordinary 5th-level alchemist, he would have definitely been eliminated. The audience watching the tournament all intuitively remained quiet. If it was too noisy, it would have quite a detrimental effect on alchemists. Originally, the alchemists were already having a hard time adapting to conduct alchemy in front of such a large audience. Among the crowd, some of the deans were hiding in disguise. They all came observe how the alchemists from their own sect was performing. At the same time, they could also glance at the level of the alchemists from the other sects. "Time's up," Mrs. Li shouted. Her voice sent many alchemists concentrating in refining dans into shock, which was immediately followed by a ringing of explosions one after another. Some low-level alchemists were frightened from this, which led to the explosion in their furnaces. Seeing this hilarious spectacle in front of him made Chen Shang secretly laugh. The low-rank tournament stage was the funniest. Many of the alchemical furnaces had blown up. Many of participants were crying in tears. These low-level alchemists were participating for the first time, and they had never encountered such a scene where their performance would be affected. Not to mention, they were originally very tense. Such a shout from Mrs. Li had scared them into committing a major error in front of an enormous crowd. On the low-rank and middle-rank tournament stage, a lot of participants had already blown up their alchemical furnaces. They dejectedly left the stage. Only the alchemists on the high-rank tournament stage remained calm. All of them seemed to be successful in refining, they were only waiting for the score. On the high-rank tournament stage, there were currently 25 alchemists left, and a few good high-level alchemists were responsible for supervising the tournament. Therefore the result of their round would come out quickly. These old alchemists opened the lid of those furnaces one by one and inspected the dan inside it. They then recorded the result on a book. As these alchemists opened the lid of an alchemical furnace, many had a disappointed look on their old faces. After they took out the dan, all of them were shaking their head. Chen Shang near the back of the line. He found that the rank of dan refined by these alchemists were all low in level, but the number of dans refined was same as normal, so their score would still be a bit higher compared to normal. After his careful observation, he found that the vast majority of dans refined were all middle-grade spirit level dans. On this stage, only he had chosen to refine a high-grade spirit level, the true elemental dan. Once Chen Zhang's turn arrived, the other alchemist also became very concerned. Chen Shang had a very calm look hanging on his face. It was quite evident that he had been successful in refining. These alchemists reckoned that Chen Shang had, at most, refined a single true elemental dan. In contrast with their dans, it would certainly be a bit worse, because the assessment is based on the price. If the true elemental dan's quality was low, the price was only 3,000 or so crystal stones. If it was middle-grade spirit level dan, although the quality was slightly worse, if they won in quantity, the overall price would be higher. As the lid of the brilliant flame dragon furnace was opened, a rich herb fragrance began diffusing, rousing the mind of alchemists present on the stage. At the same time, it made them extremely shocked. All the alchemists on the stage were all veterans. With just a whiff of the herb fragrance, they all knew the true elemental dan refined out by Chen Shang was very good in quality. 5 true elemental dan. Top-grade quality, a 7th-level old alchemist exclaimed. Several other old alchemists hastily came over. When they were walking over, the jade card with 7 golden lines hanging on their waist was shaking left and right. It was extremely dazzling. They were all 7th-level alchemists. Although there was only a difference of 1 level between them and 6th-level alchemists, all the 6th-level alchemists held these old men in high regards in their hearts. The alchemists on the high-rank tournament all had an unbelievable look hanging on their faces. They all stood up on the tip of their toes, and looked towards Chen Zhang's location. After those several old alchemists arrived, holding the true elemental dan refined out by Chen Shang, all of them could not help but exclaim again and again. Under normal circumstances, only 3 true elemental dan could be refined, at most 4. Yet Chen Shang had refined 5 in one go, moreover, using rotten herbs. What was most inconceivable for them was that Chen Shang hadn't used the spirit crystal essence to achieve such a result. The alchemists on the high-rank tournament stage could not help but suspect Chen Shang was cheating. His alchemical furnace was carefully examined by me. While he was in alchemy, I also observed each and every action of his. There is no possibility of cheating, not to mention these true elemental dans all had been just come out of the furnace. Our Danxiang Taoyuan carefully cultivates the herbs. After a true elemental dan is refined out by our herbs, it would produce a unique herbal fragrance. From the herbal fragrance alone, it is quite certain that these true elemental dan had been refined just from those rotten herbs. An old alchemist said. Although he was also extremely shocked, he still had to acknowledge the facts presented in front of him. The other old alchemists also nodded their head one by one. All of them were experts in alchemy. They were many times formidable than any 6th-level alchemists. Their insights were also very sinister. All of them had the very same judgment. Chen Shang had not cheated in any way. These old alchemists really wanted to ask Chen Shang how he could refine such a good quality true elemental dan even in the absence of the spirit crystal essence. However, they could not ask. Each alchemist had their own alchemy techniques, which was not told to any outsiders. If the spirit crystal essence was made available, these 7th-level old alchemists could also refine top-grade quality true elemental dan using those rotten herbs, but at most it would have been only 2, even 3 would be a very difficult result to achieve. But in contrast, Chen Shang had refined out 5 dans, which was far more than what they could do. Chen Zhang's alchemy talent had already impressed those 7th-level alchemists. Their eyes were filled with respect when they looked at Chen Shang. Even though Chen Shang was presently a 5th-level alchemist, his basics were far beyond them. In their eyes, Chen Shang was nothing less than a peerless genius in the realm of alchemy. Chapter 308. Bad Luck. If one were discussing about the value, these 5 true elemental dans from Chen Shang could be sold heftily. He was once again able to smoothly clear the round, and still so perfectly. This left those 6th-level alchemists extremely jealous. In their hearts, they were secretly ashamed. They were actually worse than an inexperienced brat. Moreover, the other party was just a low 5th-level alchemist. These alchemists were feeling jealous, but they also acknowledged the same thing as those 7th-level alchemists. They knew Chen Zhang's foundations were extremely shocking. He could use the herbs to their very limit. From his solid basics, it was quite clear that Chen Zhang's future in alchemy would be limitless. At the end of the second round, a lot of eliminated participants once again walked off the low-rank and middle-rank tournament stage, while only 5 were eliminated from the high-rank tournament stage. Next, it was third round. Even though the alchemists on stage had cleared another round, they were still feeling extremely tense. Especially those alchemists who were just barely able to pass through the last round. The second round gave them nearly unbearable pressure. The third round would certainly be the same, if not tougher. Both Wu Qianqun and Yao Haisheng had also smoothly cleared the second round. Wu Qianqun had refined 2 true elemental dan while Yao Haisheng only managed to refine 1, but both of dans were of top-grade quality. This also came as a shock to these old men. Speaking of the middle-rank tournament stage, their performance was very good. 3 alchemists from the extreme martial sect were able to refine top-grade quality true elemental dan. The other alchemists noticed this and were in extreme admiration for Elder Dan's alchemy technique. They believed Chen Shang, Wu Qianqun and Yao Haisheng had been guided by Elder Dan, only then they could learn the trick to refine the true elemental dan without using any spirit crystal essence. The third round needs a little bit of luck. Those struck with bad luck, this round might be end for them. Mrs. Li raised her mouth, as a hint of strange smile appeared on her face. This made the remaining alchemists secretly feel jittery. The low-rank and middle-rank tournament has now entered the final round. The champion will be decided in this round. The rules are as follows. The participants will be using the alchemical furnace provided by the Danxiang Taoyuan to refine the dan. The herbs will also be provided by the Danxiang Taoyuan. The low-rank tournament participants have to refine the grand elemental dan. The participants of the middle-rank tournament have to refine the true elemental dan, and the round will start with the assigning of alchemical furnaces by drawing lots. The low-rank and middle-rank tournament stage were filled with alchemical furnaces. These alchemical furnace appeared to be very poor in quality. Looking at them made the eyes of alchemists twitch. It would be very difficult to refine a dan using these alchemical furnace. Hell, wasn't it simply pitting them? Moreover, there was the damn time restriction. Really, the final round was the most difficult. Chen Shang was also feeling pressure at this point. He found out these alchemical furnaces were even worse than the poor quality furnace given by his father. This would certainly affect him in unleashing the full potential of his flames and the herbs. The high-rank tournament will be different. The winner will be decided in a 4th round. Mrs. Li said. The high-rank tournament also had a 4th round. This made Chen Shang and the others, these 20 alchemists, secretly complain. There were numbers on these alchemical furnaces. The notes in the lots also had a corresponding number on them. When it was time to draw lots, the participants would receive the corresponding alchemical furnace. If one's luck was bad, they would receive a tattered alchemical furnace, which would then spell the end for them in the tournament. Motherfucker, aren't these alchemical furnaces damaged from someone else the explosion when they were refining dans? How in the hell are we supposed to refine in this? Chen Shang cursed. The other alchemists also began grumbling one by one. Chen Shang had already seen a tragic man draw a rotten number, and was assigned an alchemical furnace full of cracks. Anyone could tell that this man was doomed. These alchemists had all been vigorously nurtured by some sector family. The furnace they usually used were of very high quality. Now suddenly they had to use a rotten alchemical furnace. This was a test of an alchemist's basic foundation. It could be determined how good was an alchemist was without relying on a good alchemical furnace. Suddenly, Hua Xiangyu's voice rang in Chen Zhang's mind. Little rascal, when you are drawing the lots from the box, if you feel a cold lottery, then grab it, I'll arrange a good one for you. Listening to Hua Xiangyu's transmission, Chen Xiang looked all around him but didn't find a single trace of Hua Xiangyu. However, he was secretly excited in his heart. Although he felt it was a little unfair to the other alchemists, he justified himself in thinking that among these alchemists he was the youngest and weakest. After that he was more at ease. In the tower above us, Long Shui notified Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang immediately looked up, yet he still didn't see Hua Xiangyu. However, he could see a pair of shiny pretty eyes through a window opening. Lu Menger stepped to the side, and slightly sighed. This little rascal actually found you here, what a very powerful divine sense. Hua Xiangyu was also very surprised. It seems this little rascal had hidden more deeply than I imagined. Xiangyu, are you truly going to help him draw a good alchemical furnace? Asked Lu Menger. Of course not. Since this brat wants to take an unfair advantage, I'll let him suffer some losses. I'll make him draw the worst alchemical furnace. Even if I use that sort of alchemical furnace, it would be very difficult to refine anything out. Considering this brat, I would be surprised if the furnace didn't quickly explode. Hua Xiangyu said while mischievously smiling. You're very bad. If he loses, he will hate you. Lu Menger said with some concern. This brat is not going to lose, just you wait and watch. We can make a bet if you don't believe me. Hua Xiangyu had never bet before, but now she personally raising the subject. Lu Menger was unsure. She shook her head. On the high-rank tournament stage, 20 alchemical furnaces were placed. In the center, there was an alchemical furnace completely covered in cracks. It looked like a single touch would shatter the entire thing. Chen Xiang and those other 6th-level alchemists suddenly felt a cold sweat drip down their spines. Whoever took out that alchemical furnace, well, bad luck from 8th generation would fall upon them. In the 3rd round of the high-rank tournament, you have to refine the 100 beasts Dan using these alchemical furnaces. Also, we ask you treasure these alchemical furnaces, because during the final 4th round, you still need the alchemical furnace. Mrs. Li's words made these alchemists on the tournament stage feel as if they had fallen into an ice-cold abyss. The 4th round should be the most difficult, and much to everyone's surprise they still had to use these tattered garbage furnaces. This gave many alchemists an extreme urge to swear. Chen Xiang reckoned all of this was definitely the work of Hua Xiangyu. Chen Xiang, you're going to draw the lots first. You're given priority because you were first in the last 2 rounds. Mrs. Li said. Chen Xiang was feeling elated. He knew Hua Xiangyu had already arranged a good one for him. However, looking at those 20 alchemical furnaces, he didn't find any good ones among them, but he still believed in Hua Xiangyu. After Chen Xiang put his hand inside the box, he felt something cold very soon and immediately grabbed that lottery, then took out his hand. It's actually the 8th one, your sister's. Chen Xiang suddenly began loudly cursing. He definitely hit the jackpot all right. The single definite worst alchemical furnace was his. He did not think Hua Xiangyu would actually set him up and intentionally make him draw the worst alchemical furnace. The alchemists on the high-rank tournament stage felt elated and simultaneously heaved a sigh of relief. The very worst alchemical furnace had a master, drawn by the one who had also made them intensely jealous. They could already see Chen Zhang's furnace exploding, his whole face covered in ashes. Thinking of this, their mood suddenly became good despite the hard task in front of them. While swearing, Chen Xiang walked over and very carefully held that rotten alchemical furnace in his arms. He then returned to his location, before glaring towards the Danxiang Tower not far away from him. He looked up at the 20th floor and clenched his teeth, his eyes filled with fury. Naughty girl, this father will definitely strip off your clothes. Otherwise it will be impossible to resolve this hate in my heart. Chen Xiang secretly swore in his heart. Chapter 308 Bad Luck. Chapter 309, Creating Miracles. Creating Miracles. Show TL note. Lu Menger nibbled her lips, as she noticed Chen Zhang's projected gaze through the window seam. Seductress, look what you did, this brat is certainly going to hate you. Lu Menger said with a worried look. Chen Zhang's loss struck her pretty hard. Menger, it seems you have been completely infatuated by that little rascal, hey hey. Hua Xiangyu replied with a completely careless look, just watch, that little rascal's alchemy potential has still not been fully unleashed, I did this in order to stimulate his potential. He is too heavily on that powerful furnace, which makes him ignore a few basic things. As Chen Shang inspected the ragged furnace and he felt a chill running down his spine. The furnace was completely covered in cracks. At least it still had a few inferior spiritual arrays on the inside. It didn't appear any different than any ordinary furnace, yet it was so damaged that even the slightest touch threatened to shatter the furnace into countless shards. Hua Shangyu, you better pray that I win, otherwise don't blame me for not showing any compassion on girls. No, even if I win, I'll still strip off your clothes. Chen Shang cursed in his heart. He was filled with indignant anger. If the tournament wasn't going on, he would have flown over and demanded an explanation and payback from Hua Shangyu. The 100 Beasts Dan was a low-grade profound level Dan. Although it was relatively easy to refine, Chen Shang felt if he used this sort of thing to refine it, the difficulty would be same as refining an Immortal Dan. Everyone will refine one set of 100 Beasts Dan in a stipulated amount of time, just like the previous round, based on the quantity as well as the quality you will be assessed. And one more thing, there will be no extra points for finishing early, now prepare yourself. Mrs. Li said. At this moment, Chen Shang had no other way, he could only bite the bullet and rely on this ragged furnace for alchemy. The herbs were already being passed out. The Danxiang Taoyuan was not lacking in herbs, not to mention the ingredients for the 100 Beasts Dan, which they had the most of. That was why they were willing to take out such expensive herbs. Each participant will only get 2 chances. If you fail for the first time, you can come here and receive another set of herbs. This was still something to rejoice about. After all, they were using these sorts of damaged furnaces for the first time, and none of them had complete confidence. The alchemists on the high-rank tournament stage were looking at Chen Shang as if they were looking at a loser. Their faces were filled with gloating sneers. In the audiences too, there was no end to the discussion among about him. They were all feeling sorry for Chen Shang. His luck was rotten to the core, he actually drew the most damaged furnace. Chen Shang noticed the look of ridicule on those alchemists' face, and felt uncomfortable in his heart. He could not wait to blast the ragged alchemical furnace in front of him into slags. Calm down, you must have confidence in yourself, you have become a 5th-level alchemist before the age of 30. Not to mention in the Chenwu mainland, even in the entire mortal world this is rarely seen. Bai Yuyu encouraged Chen Shang. Senior sister is right, you must have confidence in yourself. Think about it, even though only we know about your alchemy course, it is still very brilliant. This sister have been regarded as an alchemy genius, yet you're more formidable than me. You'll definitely able to win the tournament. Su Meiyao too encouraged Chen Shang. Obtaining the encouragement of 2 beauties, Chen Shang was brimming with confidence. As long as a beautiful goddess was on their side, a man would tread through fire and water without any hesitation, his performance would be on a completely different level. What if I cause some trouble so that these guys cannot succeed, that way everyone will be finished this round. Long Shuiyi, this naughty dragoness, grinningly said. No need. At this time, Chen Shang was completely a new person. That crestfallen aura from before happened to be not seen, now he was filled with fighting spirit, completely filled with confidence. Yun Xiaodao, Zhu Rong and the others were also feeling regretful. To their utter dismay, Chen Zhang's luck turned out to be so bad. At the most crucial moment, he drew such a trashy alchemical furnace. Look, I remember every time elder brother Chen has this look, he would create miracles. Yun Xiaodao said. He happened to be around Chen Shang for a long time now, even when everyone believed it would be impossible to accomplish, Chen Shang had proven them wrong time and time again. Zhu Rong laughed and said, we're worrying in vain, younger brother Chen's alchemy level is high and enigmatic, he's sure to have some backup plan. A smile suddenly appeared on Yun Xiaodao and the others' faces. They were all good friends of Chen Shang, they definitely wanted him to win. Far away on a corner, 2 men wearing hats and garbed in black robes were drinking wine upon a tree. Dean, do you think our young martial uncle can become the champion? Wu Kaming asked. No idea, our young martial uncle always does unpredictable things. For him, we cannot use normal standards to measure him, we can only wait and watch. Ji Yu Dongchen replied. Even though both him and Wu Kaming didn't expect Chen Shang to win, they still felt Chen Shang definitely would not be eliminated during the 3rd round. Although the 3rd round was only of 2 hours, it was still more than enough to refine the 100 Beasts Dan. But that was only using normal alchemical furnaces. If their damaged alchemical furnaces were taken into consideration, the time was certainly not enough, especially for Chen Shang. In order for the alchemists to perform better, their break period happened to be much longer. Soon it was noon, Feeling the hot sun shining down upon their heads and steam rising from the ground, most among the audiences were grumbling. Though, this sort of heat was nothing to the alchemists. From basking in the naked sun, soon the audiences were drenched in sweat. At this time, the low-rank and middle-rank tournament was already over. The middle-rank tournament's winner was Wu Qianqian. Chen Shang had been paying attention. He didn't find it surprising at all. After all, Wu Qianqian happened to be in possession of a fire spirit. Moreover, she had been instructed by Elder Dan. With her talent, it would have been strange if she didn't win. Yao Haisheng was second. He had refined 3 top-quality true elemental Dan, while Wu Qianqian had refined 4. They had both performed very well. After all, they too had to use a poor-quality alchemical furnace. Chen Shang was secretly happy for them. They soon arrived beside the high-rank tournament stage to watch the tournament. Wu Qianqian and Yao Haisheng were both focused in alchemy a moment ago. They didn't know Chen Shang had drawn the worst alchemical furnace. After they learned about what happened from Yun Xiaodao, they secretly sighed in their heart. Break time's over, let the round begin. Mrs. Li shouted before she flipped a relatively larger hourglass. Everyone hastily picked the herbs on the taburet, and began skillfully processing them. So many famous alchemists were refining a low-grade profound-level Dan. Many low-level alchemists were completely absorbed in watching the process. All of them hoped that they could learn a thing or two. Chen Shang could be considered to be well-versed in refining the 100 Beasts Dan. Moreover, he could refine 10 Dans at once, which was a lot. That being said, it was under the scenario that he was using the brilliant flame dragon furnace. While using the damaged alchemical furnace, he didn't have the same amount of confidence. Chen Shang quickly finished processing the herbs. His approach had been taught by Su Meiyao, which compared those around him, was quite different. The entire process looked very direct and efficient, as well as very beautiful and very pleasing to watch. The alchemists under the stage had not seen enough before Chen Shang had already thrown the herbs into the damaged alchemical furnace. Even though the alchemical furnace only had 1 entrance for pouring in flames, it would not pose any problems. The major problem was the cracks on the furnace. The heat and the herbal spirit qi leaking outside was a serious issue. If handled improperly, it would make the alchemical furnace suddenly explode. Chen Shang could only use his powerful divine sense to block these cracks, while also stabilizing the entire alchemical furnace. The originally swaying alchemical furnace soon stabilized. Everyone's hearts were still not at rest, because the cracks upon the alchemical furnace were increasing by the minute. Almost everyone's gaze were fixated on Chen Zhang's ragged furnace. They could clearly see fiery red aura overflowing out from the countless cracks. This situation was very bad. It seemed that the furnace could blow up at any time. Chapter 310, Lost. Lost. Chen Shang was extremely depressed. The alchemical furnace turned out to be even worse than he had imagined. Particularly regarding its heat resistance, not long after he poured in the fire, more cracks started to appear on the already extremely fragile furnace. If the flames were not hot enough, he would be unable to incinerate the herbs, but if things continued the way they did, the alchemical furnace might be burned into powder before the herbs would. I must stabilize this somehow. Chen Shang placed his other hand on top of the alchemical furnace and released his universal true qi, before forming a shield using with his divine sense, closely wrapping and restraining the whole furnace in it so that the alchemical furnace would no longer continue to its doom. Simultaneously, he started absorbing the heat from the surface of the alchemical furnace, reducing the overall pressure and strain on the alchemical furnace. Refining the 100 Beasts Dan was nothing difficult for Chen Shang. The hard part was to keep the alchemical furnace intact throughout the process. Chen Shang heaved a sigh of relief as new cracks stopped appearing on the alchemical furnace. However, his progress was getting slower and slower. Even though all the other alchemists had a serious and concentrated expression on their faces, their alchemical furnaces were many times better than Chen Zhang's. At least they had yet to encounter the nearly fatal problem he was facing. Time trickled away bit by bit. From time to time, Chen Zhang's damaged furnace would shake and rattle dangerously. In the blink, an hour had passed with no accidents. At this time, the alchemist from the Danxiang Taoyuan had finally succeeded in refining. Soon, one after the other, the remaining alchemists finished refining out the 100 Beasts Dan. Among the 20 participants, only Chen Shang had not finished refining. After all, the alchemical furnace he was using was worst among the worst. The fact he could persist until now without the alchemical furnace shattering into 1,000,000 pieces was already pretty good. All these alchemists gloatingly looked at the profusely sweating Chen Shang. In the last 2 rounds, Chen Shang had taken all the limelight. Seeing the current struggling appearance from Chen Shang, they were secretly overjoyed. Suddenly, Chen Zhang's alchemical furnace fiercely began to shake. He fiercely opened his eyes before a loud boom rang throughout the square. Everyone present could only see smoke blasting open in front of Chen Shang, which was accompanied by a burst of fiery light. This spectacle was soon followed by an overflowing rich herbal fragrance. The entire audience fell into deadly silence, they all blankly stared at the zoned-out Chen Shang. In their hearts, they all felt sorry for Chen Shang. Nobody here was oblivious to Chen Zhang's alchemical talent, however, just because a bit of bad luck he had lost. Yun Xiaodao heavily pinched the thick meaty arm of Zhu Rong, yet he didn't react at all. His mouth was completely open, the scene of furnace exploding was looping over and over inside his head. Wu Qianqun tightly nibbled her lips, looking at still tranced Chen Shang. She felt her heart throb in pain, while her eyes turned moist. Wu Kaming and Ji Yu Dongchen burst into sigh. Chen Shang had lost his alchemical furnace, he was destined to lose. Seeing the current appearance of Chen Shang from high above the tower, Lu Menjie lightly nibbled her lips, then slightly heaved a sigh. Her heart secretly throbbed in pain. Hua Shangyu lightly sighed and said, I overestimated him. I hope he can get through this. Just as Mrs. Li was about to announce the results of the round, Chen Shang loudly shouted, hold on. Everyone was shocked. What was Chen Shang going to do? His alchemical furnace had already blasted into pieces. With the scattering of its ashes, he had already fallen into an abyss of failure and simply had no way to climb out. Young Master Chen, you. Mrs. Li also felt sorry for Chen Shang, she was still in a bit of shock. She had no idea what Chen Shang was going to do. Chen Shang clenched his fists and looked up at the sky. Even though the blast only lasted for an instant, in that instant a lot of things had flashed through his mind, which was why he was temporarily in a trance. It seems I have been too dependent on the brilliant flame dragon furnace, but this doesn't mean if I didn't have the brilliant flame dragon furnace, I can't do anything. The way of alchemy is vast, this failure has given me an opportunity to transcend my limits, in this round, I have to challenge my own limits. Chen Shang looked at the hot sun, and thought to himself. He clenched his fists very tightly. In this instant, his face was brimming with confidence, full of fighting spirit. Looking at his complexion, many people in the audience were surprised. He had suffered such a blow, yet he was able to recover so fast. He was indeed better than the others. Mrs. Li, there is still some time left over, moreover, I still have one last opportunity. Chen Shang said with an indifferent look. This calm look and statement gave a scare to everyone. Mrs. Li had already been shocked by the imposing man emanating from Chen Shang, the same was true for the other alchemists present on the stage. Yes, but you don't have the alchemical furnace. Mrs. Li said, which was what everyone else also wanted to say. Chen Shang didn't have an alchemical furnace anymore, how was he going to continue? Chen Shang indifferently smiled and said, who says an alchemical furnace is necessary to refine Dan? Yes, technically there was no rule that stated an alchemical furnace was necessary for alchemy, but if someone was not going to use an alchemical furnace, how was a Dan going to be refined out? Mrs. Li, quickly give me the herbs, time is running out. Chen Shang seemed completely serious. The audience burst into clamor. Chen Shang was actually going to perform alchemy without the alchemical furnace, moreover, he was going to refine the 100 Beasts Dan, a low-grade profound level Dan. This brat is crazy, how could a Dan be refined without using an alchemical furnace? Yes, I've never heard of refining Dan without using an alchemical furnace. He must have lost his mind from shock. Well, no matter how he struggles, he is doomed to lose here. Quote. Everyone was talking about Chen Zhang's reaction and not one comment was even a little bit optimistic, everyone believed there was no hope for Chen Shang. But those who had been familiar with Chen Shang all knew, the calmer Chen Shang was, the more frightening he was. Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong had already witnessed such things firsthand. They suddenly became excited, even though they didn't know how Chen Shang planned to do this, they knew Chen Shang had not given up yet. As long as he hadn't given up, he was still in the competition. Shangyu, can you think of any method he plans to use? Looking at Chen Shang brimming with confidence, Lu Menjie was secretly overjoyed. Hua Shangyu shook her head, with her charring eyebrows knit together, I have no idea, if it was me, under the same circumstances, I could barely make do. However, it would require a long time before I would be able to refine out a low-grade profound level Dan. Moreover, some other things are also needed for support. Chen Zhang's confident appearance seemed to state he could win, but all those experienced and knowledgeable deans and tycoons simply could not think of any method Chen Shang could pass this round, let alone win. Chen Shang hastily took the herbs required for the 100 beasts Dan from the hands of Mrs. Li and quickly sorted them out. He only had less than an hour remaining. Even if he had the alchemical furnace, he would still need around an hour to finish refining the Dan. At this point everyone's gaze was transfixed on Chen Shang. They all believed Chen Shang was struggling in vain. Little rascal, how are you intending to do this? Su Meiyao also could not guess what was Chen Shang planning to do. She could be regarded as Chen Zhang's teacher in alchemy, yet she was sure she had never taught Chen Shang anything by which he could refine dans without using a furnace. Chen Shang was still processing the herbs with an extremely serious look on his face, as if he still had an alchemical furnace. However, everyone knew his ragged alchemical furnace had already been turned into pieces, and was littered across the stage. Many people came to appreciate his dedication, but everyone still believed, no matter what, Chen Shang was simply struggling in vain. After the herbs were processed, Chen Shang faintly smiled, and answered Su Meiyao's question, "There is a furnace in my heart." Chapter 311, The Illusionary Brilliant Furnace. The Illusionary Brilliant Furnace. A furnace in his heart. Su Meiyao was baffled and Chen Shang also didn't provide any further explanation. But very soon, Su Meiyao understood what was going on. She could sense Chen Shang releasing a powerful spiritual power, which was the mana, hidden deep within his consciousness. This mana was mystical in nature, it could let a human transform into bird or beast, and right now, Chen Shang was attempting to create a furnace with this mana. Chen Shang had an understanding in the structure of the alchemical furnace. He manipulated the mana to create an invisible alchemical furnace and also drew some auxiliary alchemical spiritual formations. These spiritual formations were all rather common, which could be commonly seen in poor quality alchemical furnaces. Chen Shang was drawing a formation for the first time, and the two using mana to draw. Chen Shang, relying on his memory, quickly drew a few auxiliary alchemical spiritual formations. Of course, nobody else could see it, only he could clearly sense them. When Chen Shang happened to learn the transforming technique from Long Shui, he needed to use mana to create some spirit patterns within his body, so that he could generate that bizarre power. Right now, he was applying the very same method on the alchemical furnace. He knew it would be a success. No one knew what Chen Shang was doing, only a few individuals with extremely powerful divine sense could sense a very peculiar divine sense on stage. Yet it was anything like divine sense. These contrasting feelings left even those powerful individuals feel bewildered and baffled. Nice. Chen Shang slightly heaved a sigh. After he had released the mana, it had not dissipated. At his will and command, it started to solidify. Soon, an invisible alchemical furnace took shape having been forged out of mana. Meanwhile, everyone else was looking at Chen Shang as if they were looking at an idiot. It seemed as if he was opening the lid of furnace, but there was nothing in front of him. Everyone believed Chen Shang had already lost his mind and gone completely crazy. Watching this scene, the square burst into sighs. They all believed Chen Shang had been hit hard by the loss and turned into an idiot. Watching him like this, Hua Shangyu and Lu Menjie both were heartbroken. They too believed Chen Shang had fallen into a deep pit of despair and turned into an idiot. They almost wanted to fly out, but when they were just about to, both of them immediately stopped and stood up in shock. Because after Chen Shang had placed the herbs down, they were suspended in midair, as if there was truly an alchemical furnace there that no one but he could see. Chen Zhang's alchemical furnace was completely invisible, which led everyone else to clearly watch the changes happening on the inside of the furnace. As Chen Shang placed his both hands into the two fire entrances, flames began to writhe. In a spiral formation, the flames rotated down from below to above, like two fire dragons meandering in circles. As they surged from the bottom to the top, burning down the herbs. These flames were suddenly large, and then suddenly small, cautiously wrapping those herbs in a very harmonious and beautiful picturesque scene. The alchemists on the stage were dumbstruck without any exception. Shockingly watching Chen Shang and that invisible, alchemical furnace, of his, they could not help but feel cold on the back of their neck as they witnessed this strange and miraculous scene in front of them. Many people for the first time saw the process of alchemy, which allowed them to have a clear understanding how the herbs were successfully refined. How the hell is he doing this? Hua Shangyu said in surprise. She could sense an invisible and very strange power, seemingly divine sense yet not, right in front of Chen Shang. She was sure Chen Shang had used this strange divine sense to create an invisible alchemical furnace for alchemy. This strange divine sense neither could be considered unusually strong, nor it could be considered very weak. It could closely entrap the violent flames released by Chen Shang, without any heat leaking outside. When the herbs were being incinerated, the released herbal spirit qi were even more violent, yet they could still not break away from the encasing divine sense. "Pretty good brat, you made me admire you," Su Meiyao praisingly said. When refining a dan, so long as those tyrannical herbal spirit qi were not allowed to spill, the dans could still be refined even in a poor quality alchemical furnace. Among the few inferior spiritual formations drawn by Chen Shang, some were there to suppress herbal spirit qi, while some were useful in controlling the temperature. Chen Shang named this alchemical furnace the illusionary brilliant furnace. Although it was rather a common quality furnace, it was still miles better to those ragged alchemical furnaces provided by Danxiang Taoyuan. Everyone else blankly watched Chen Shang refine the dans right in front of them. The audience could clearly see colorful herbal spirit qi emerging out of the herbs as they were being burned. These herbal spirit qis very violently rushed to the top, which was just next to the lid. Many alchemists understood this with one glance. Colorful herbal spirit qi dancingly rose to the top, before tussling together with other herbal spirit qis. But in the end, they had been suppressed by an formless power, which forced them to fuse into a green mist. Despite its delicate appearance, everyone could tell this thin mist was very tyrannical. Although no one else could see the alchemical furnace, many could discern that this invisible alchemical furnace happened to have 3 layers. The uppermost layer was dedicated for the solidification of dan, a central layer was for the incineration of the herbs, and the bottommost layer from where the flames were released. It had a very common structure and almost everyone could notice this with a single glance. The flames gradually turned smaller. Quite a bit of green powder suddenly emerged in the central layer, twinkling with green light. This green powder were precisely the herbal powder, the end result of refinement after those herbs were carefully baked by flames. After these herbal powders were gathered together, an invisible power sucked them into the uppermost layer, and started fusing them together with that tyrannical green herbal spirit qi. The instant they were being fused together, they turned even more tyrannical. The onlooking alchemists were gasping for breath. Although they were very clear on the fact this was the most difficult part, it was the first time they could actually see it happening in front of their eyes. This sort of feeling was very different from when they were examining it using their divine sense during alchemy. These alchemists had been deeply shocked by Chen Zhang's skills. While the experts were recognizing the artistry, the laymen were simply enjoying the show. These alchemists were very shocked, nevertheless, they were intently watching Chen Shang refining the dan. When Chen Shang was refining, even a little bit of the herbal spirit qi or herbal powder had leaked. Not to mention, he had burned the herbs very thoroughly, which resulted in production of a lot more herbal powder than the usual, which was similarly true for the herbal spirit qis. But because of this, during the fusion of herbal spirit qi with the herbal powder, it would turn even more tyrannical, which was not good for the solidification of dans. And right now, Chen Shang had just entered the solidification process. Lu Menger stared with her pretty eyes. She also knew how to refine a few low-level dans. Seeing Chen Shang use this kind of mystical ability, she could not help but feel admiration for him. The concern on her face had also disappeared, replaced by a sweet gentle smile. "Shangyu, you were right. This little rascal's potential is very big, you've unexpectedly managed to force him into using this killer move." Lu Menger slightly smiled and said. "I also had no idea that he could actually do this. I initially thought his furnace would not explode, and he would be able to use the tattered furnace till the end. He has truly surprised me." Hua Shangyu was also an alchemist. At the moment, she was not looking at Chen Zhang's invisible alchemical furnace, but rather the superb and perfect alchemy technique being executed by Chen Shang. Even those 6th level and 7th level alchemists in the square almost had their eyes popped out. Not only had Chen Shang actually suppressed the tyrannical herbal spirit qi, but he also divided it into 10 parts. 10 parts, that was basically 10 dans. Ordinarily, 600 or 700 beasts dans was the limit, and that was when the alchemist at their very best condition. No matter what one said, Chen Zhang's current state was far from that, and not to mention the alchemical furnace he had created, which made every other alchemist feel ashamed at themselves. 10 groups of azure herbal spirit qi groups suddenly started spinning, while slowly converging. The flames in the central layer of alchemical furnace were sometimes smaller, sometimes larger. His control was quite subtle. Along with the flames, the 10 azure cyclones would sometimes spin faster, sometimes slower, while Chen Shang, with a calm look hanging on his face, observed the changes happening inside the furnace. There were still a lot of sand left inside the hourglass, yet the 10 azure cyclones converged together, and suddenly disappeared as they turned into 10 bright azure dans. Finished, Chen Shang loudly shouted. At this point almost half an hour was still left. In the quiet square, his completely excited and confident voice suddenly echoed. Chen Shang had been successful without using an alchemical furnace. He had successfully refined dans, moreover in just half an hour. Chapter 312. Brilliant. Brilliant. Chen Shang drew a tattered alchemical furnace, which then blasted apart during the alchemy. Yet even when everyone thought it was hopeless for him, even in the adverse circumstances, Chen Shang had not only turned the tables but also cleared the round with best result. Mrs. Li, along with few other 7th-level alchemists, carefully inspected Chen Zhang's 100 beast dans. Each dan of his was of top quality, a lot better compared with the other alchemists on the stage, rendering those formerly gloating alchemists speechless. Chen Shang was once again in the limelight. A low 5th-level alchemist, in all 3 rounds had been a cut above these 6th-level alchemists, leaving others the impression that those 6th-level alchemists were inferior compared to Chen Shang. Top-grade quality, really left this old man too far behind to catch up. Forget even considering doing something like this without an alchemical furnace. Even if I had one, it will still be difficult for me to do this. An old man sighed in shame and said. Other old alchemists nodded in agreement. No one even dared to suggest that Chen Shang had cheated, because the entire process of refining the 100 beasts dan was obvious to all. It was all clearly performed in front of their eyes. The first time seeing the process of a dan refinement occurring with such clarity in front of them had opened the outlook for many people. Although Chen Shang had only used half an hour, for many, it felt like they had just finished watching a long wonderful drama. As such, they didn't feel the passage of time. Everyone in succession were lamenting over this brilliant display of alchemy technique by Chen Shang. Seeing was one thing, and refining was altogether another. Although a successful method of refining top-quality 100 beasts dan was presented by Chen Shang in front of these alchemists, it would rather be difficult for them to replicate the results. This would require perfect fire-controlling skills, as well as exquisite control over divine sense. Not to mention the relevant experience, and of course, most importantly, the talent. Now, there were only 15 alchemists left in the high-rank tournament. The 4th round was also the final round. At this moment, Chen Shang couldn't help but tense up along with everyone else. The participants have to yet again refine dans, but the difficulty this time would obviously be a grade above from all previous rounds. Chen Shang had been only familiar and successful with the illusionary brilliant furnace just a moment ago, and that was also because he happened to be refining the 100 beasts dan. If it was building foundation dan or elemental spirit dan, then it would have been rather difficult. Now it was break period. Chen Shang was not exhausted from the previous endeavor. The consumption of mana was very low. As long as it didn't dissipate, he could take it back and use it again with little consumption issues. Elder brother Chen is too formidable. Ha ha ha, I knew it, he must have had some way. Then again, although I was already prepared for it, I was still surprised. Yun Xiaodao said while laughing. Refining the 100 beasts dan for younger brother Chen was very easy. After returning, I will definitely give him few herbs for refining. Zhu Rong said while laughing and rubbing his hands. If younger brother Chen can help me refine dans all day long, how good that would that be? Get the fuck out. How can elder brother Chen waste his time in helping you refine those shitty dans? Yun Xiaodao said as he kicked Zhu Rong. Xu Weilong frowned and said, the next round is definitely going to be very difficult. Chen Shang must have used quite a lot the divine sense to refine like that. Perhaps he had almost consumed all of his divine sense for such a strenuous action. At this time, the discussion in the square about the working principle of that move was still not showing any signs of abating. Dean, teacher doesn't seem to know how to use this kind of strange divine sense. Wu Kaming said. Their teacher was the senior brother of Chen Shang. Both of them had obtained the inheritance of that old madman. He speculated that move of Chen Shang had been taught by the old madman. That stuff is more formidable compared to divine sense. It should be some altered form of divine sense. That explains why it had some features of divine sense, but not quite the same. Although it is possible to congeal divine sense and also enclose flames-like things, there is no way it could be so stable. After young martial uncle had released it out, he could also take it back, without dispersing a bit. Ji Yudongchen could also not identify what in the world Chen Shang had just used. Only after cultivating Shinto could Chen Shang possess mana. Those who cultivated Shinto were scarce in number, obviously no one else here knew what it was. Now do you realize the magical effects of mana? It can be said that you have used a type of transformation among the 72 transformations. This kind of transformation is not transforming your own body, but rather releasing mana out of the body and then transforming it. If one could reach the highest state of mastery, they could create a dragon, or even an entire world. Long Shui's words stunned Chen Shang. Creating an entire world, just how much mana would be required to accomplish that? Hey, do not be so surprised. Maybe the world we are currently living in was created by a powerful individual using mana. Long Shui's words scared the hell out of Chen Shang. The world was very big, no one knew what strange things were out there. Chen Shang now came to realize the formidability of Shinto. He now understood why dragons were so naturally powerful. In the top floor of Danxiang Tower, Hua Shangyu had to hold back the impulse to seek out Chen Shang many times. She really wanted to know how Chen Shang managed to achieve such a feat. Along with Lu Menger, Hua Shangyu had discussed in detail on the event but only managed to come to conclusion that Chen Shang had a unique martial technique which allowed him to cultivate out this kind of strange divine sense. Shangyu, what's the next round going to be like? Lu Menger asked. Chen Shang had barely managed to arrive this step, and she didn't want to see Chen Shang fail. Hua Shangyu mysteriously smiled, just wait a bit and you'll find out. This last round is his greatest test, I specially designed it for him. This will force him to give it all. Actually, just a while ago, I thought he will not be able to last till the end. Chen Shang looked at the fragments of the tattered alchemical furnace littered on the ground. When he had obtained the alchemical furnace, he felt furious. But now that he thought about it, if it wasn't for this, he may not have found out mana could be used in such a way. Although he was using this ability for the tournament, maybe this method could still be used in future. Now that he knew mana could be used like this, he intended to take out some time in his schedule, and try to go one step further, and learn that said change from Long Shui. After the break was over, everyone was looking forward to the details of the next round. They also wanted to see Chen Shang using the transparent alchemical furnace for alchemy again. Especially the alchemists among the audience, they could learn a lot of things from watching that process again. Not to mention, it was also a lot more interesting than watching other alchemists using those tattered alchemical furnaces. Chen Shang was also a bit tensed while awaiting Mrs. Li's announcement on the details of the next round. The high-rank tournament's last and final round is about to begin. In this round, everyone will have to challenge the limits of their own alchemy. The participants will have to precisely use the alchemical furnace from before and refine 3 kinds of low-grade profound level dans, and then based on those 3 different low-grade profound level dans, the champion will be determined. Mrs. Li's words made Chen Zhang's heart fall into an abyss. Chen Shang could currently only refine 3 kinds of low-grade profound level dans, but he only had the herbs for 2 of them. Those were the 100 Beasts Dan and the Elemental Spirit Dan, but for the Building Foundation Dan he was lacking the Azure Profound Fruit. Last time when he went for the assessment for the 5th level Alchemist, it was provided by Lu Menger. Start your preparations, you've to use your own herbs. I think everyone had prepared the herbs before arriving here, Mrs. Li said. Chen Shang was incessantly regretting the fact he didn't bring some Azure Profound Fruit when he was coming. If he could only refine 2 kinds of Dan, he would lose. Although the Elemental Spirit Dan was very expensive, everyone else was going to be refining 3 different Dans. Not to mention, the 100 Beasts Dan was also the cheapest among the low-grade profound level Dans. What to do? Chen Shang asked Su Meiyao and the others. Originally, I didn't want you to learn this alchemy technique early, but since your basics are very good, and your divine sense is also quite strong, so I'll teach you in advance. Su Meiyao said. What technique? Chen Shang was delighted in his heart that there was still a way out of this. Do you think high-level alchemists, like Elder Dan, collect a large number of precious herbs in order to learn refining those high-rank Dans? No, the herbs for the high-rank Dan is even more rarer than the Elemental Spirit Dan herbs. After the alchemist achieves that level, they often have to refine unfamiliar Dans. With this technique they have a 50% chance of success. Su Meiyao said. Chen Shang was stunned, this was completely different from the alchemy he knew. Chapter 313, Refining Simulation Technique. Refining simulation technique. In Chen Zhang's cognition, the more high-level Dan it was, the more it would be difficult to refine. The alchemist must try refining a Dan many times before he learns refining it successfully. But according to Su Meiyao, alchemists at a certain level could have a 50% success rate at the start without ever refining a high-level Dan. This was very difficult for Chen Shang to accept. Because even after he became familiar with refining the elemental spirit Dan and building foundation Dan, when he refined the 100 beasts Dan, he didn't have anywhere close to a 50% success rate at the start. Lu Menger is collecting the herbs for the alchemist by betting on these very odds. After all, it is earth-level Dan. The herbs are even rarer than the ones required for the building foundation Dan, and their maturity period is extremely long. If we follow the most basic way of alchemy, just to collect all the herbs, the alchemists would have to spend tens of thousands of years. In light of this, even in 100,000 years, there would not be a single person who can achieve the rank of Dan ancestor. Su Meiyao once again explained. Chen Shang nodded his head. Before, he was also having some doubts on how these high-level alchemists could go so far. If one had to amass so many herbs, that would be far too unrealistic, especially the herbs for those earth-level and heaven-level Dans. These herbs couldn't just be found anytime you wanted them. This technique has very high requirements for divine sense and the perception of alchemy. When you use this technique, you'll enter a very peculiar state. And then in your mind, you will simulate the alchemy process. This alchemy technique is called refining simulation technique, and many high-level alchemists need to master it. Generally, one begins to learn this method when they are refining low-grade earth-level Dans. If you master this method, you'll at least be able to refine middle-grade earth-level Dans. Although this technique had a relatively common name, Chen Shang was aware it was a very difficult technique to master. In this refining simulation technique, the alchemist would have conducted the simulation of the alchemy process a few steps ahead of its real-life equivalent while refining the Dan. Within their mind, one would deduce what would happen in the near future and then adjust the alchemy process in advance for that particular refinement. You'll use this method to refine the 5 elements true elemental Dan. There is still a bit time left, I'll teach you how to simulate in the meantime. For this technique, you need to be familiar with the characteristics features of the herbs and then rely on your perception. Your alchemy perception is a lot more sensitive compared with other alchemists. Many times I've envied you because of this, which is also why I believe you are ready for it. Plus, you also cultivate Shinto, so your divine sense has already reached the level to cast the refining simulation technique. Su Meiyao's voice turned serious, like a strict teacher teaching powerful and difficult technique. Chen Shang also listened very attentively like any faithful student should. I'll first describe the process of the refining simulation technique in detail, pay attention. Next, Su Meiyao quickly described the process. Time was very pressing, but she had confidence in Chen Shang, she was sure he could definitely master it in time. As long as Chen Shang could take this step, he had the potential to become a Dan King. Su Meiyao had seen a lot exceptionally talented alchemists, but the alchemists who could take the last step along with her, were none. Everyone got struck in the aforementioned bottleneck, that was the so-called refining simulation technique. Only she was able to completely master this step, allowing her to refine a few high-level Dans many times successfully. While attentively listening to Su Meiyao, Chen Shang was secretly marveled at the complexity of the process. At the same time, he was also extremely excited, because there was a challenge in front of him which would allow him to break through the challenging bottleneck of alchemists in advance. That's it, that's all of my experience. I'm sharing it with others for the first time. You comprehend it yourself, you have fire spirit, so you'll be even more familiar with your own flame. This is also your advantage, plus you cultivate Shinto. With all this combined, you have larger chance to successfully master it than most. Su Meiyao thought it was an opportunity, since Chen Shang wanted to become the champion of the tournament, and he also didn't have the alchemical furnace, the situation was very bad but also perfect for this sort of breakthrough. People tended to break past their limits under these pressured situations. Which was also why when many people encounter a bottleneck, they would take some sort of risk in order to pass it. They would go fight with some powerful spirit beast, and break through the bottleneck in course of the fight. When people fell into adverse situation, the likelihood of producing a miracle is far higher. Chen Shang's past deeds were a clear example of this fact. The tournament had not yet started, but Chen Shang was already running the simulation of refining the true elemental Dan in his mind. He closed his eyes, and in accordance with the method taught by Su Meiyao, breathed in a unique pattern which made him enter a state where he forgot everything, forgot himself and everything around him, and achieved an unparalleled degree of focus. At this time, he felt he was inside a big white space. He sat cross-legged there, released the illusionary brilliant furnace, and then began placing the herbs. Bang! Chen Shang was suddenly awake with a jolt. His forehead was slightly drenched in sweat. Just a moment ago, it was as if he was in a dream, dreaming about refining the true elemental Dan. But while refining the Dan, an error occurred, which led to the furnace blasting into pieces. This won't do. A while ago you have completely fallen in your consciousness. You need to be awake, and let your own consciousness do the simulation of alchemy process. When you are applying it, you need to do alchemy, while running the simulation in your mind. Moreover, your simulation need to be a tad bit faster than the actual alchemy. During the simulation, when you encounter the same problem in refining, you have to immediately adjust it in reality, while at the same time immediately run the simulation from the end of your adjustment. Su Meiyao explained. Chen Shang slightly sighed and said, I understand. The technique is to deduce the problem we are going to encounter in the future during the refining. Suppose I'm in a fight, I'll be able to predict the actions of opposite party, and be ready for it in advance. If I'm going to be stabbed to death, I can prepare to either avoid or block the strike. Yes, the refining simulation is exactly this. It will let you predict the change going to occur in your alchemical furnace. Once there is a problem, you can immediately adjust to fix it and continue. Su Meiyao nodded and said. This time, Chen Shang didn't close his eyes, and once again ran the refining simulation. When he was running the refining simulation, he could increase the speed, because it was happening inside a world of his consciousness, where he could do as he wished. In just a few blinks, the illusionary brilliant furnace appeared in Chen Zhang's mind along with the herbs already entirely processed. He placed them inside the alchemical furnace, and began refining the Dan. The speed can be a little faster, but make sure you cross the T's and dot the I's. After the herbs are incinerated, how will the herbs will change? How the flame will release the herbal spirit qi, and so forth. In short, you cannot let any bit of details inside the alchemical furnace pass. So long as there is a bit of error, you can adjust in the reality, but you need to perfectly replicate it first. Su Meiyao said. Chen Shang now knew why the refining simulation technique could allow the high-level alchemists to have high success rates when refining unfamiliar high-level dans. If he could grasp this technique, it was equivalent to encountering the situation in alchemical furnace beforehand, and he could adjust and even avoid the mistake. This kind of method was very powerful, but the requirements for divine sense and perception were very high. Chen Shang was almost unable to bear it. He felt very tired, his mind too exhausted. Preparation time is finished, let the round begin. When the sun rises tomorrow, that will be the end of this round. Mrs. Li said. It was already late evening. Chen Shang didn't expect they would get so much time until tomorrow morning. This was totally out of his and Su Meiyao's expectations. The time is actually not that much. No one can complete it quickly because they are all using those broken furnaces. Danxiang Taoyuan is definitely aware of this. After all, these alchemists had to refine 3 kinds of Dan they are most adept in, the most expensive low-grade profound level Dan. Not to mention them having to use these broken furnaces. Even if they have better furnaces they will need a long time. Bai Yu said. Many in the arena saw the time was far too long to remain waiting here, so they left one by one. They all thought they could just get up before tomorrow morning and see the results. Chapter 314, Learning and Applying at Hand. Learning and applying at hand. Except for Chen Shang, the rest of the remaining alchemists on the stage all took out some rare and precious spirit herbs, which could be identified by many among the audiences. Only Chen Shang stood still. Chen Shang had actually started long ago, however, he was performing the simulation of the refining of the true elemental Dan in his mind, because this was the Dan he had most refined the most. He was also the most adept at it, which was why it was better to test run with it. Little rascal, go ask Mrs. Li whether you can refine other Dan for practicing, you have a lot of time now. Su Meiyao said. Although Chen Shang was running the refining simulation of the true elemental Dan in his mind, he could still divert his attention to do other stuff. Mrs. Li, can I refine other Dans for practice? Chen Shang asked. There was nothing mentioned about this in this rules. If you are not worried about getting yourself tired or about squandering your time, you are allowed. Mrs. Li replied. Alchemists practicing before alchemy was common thing, and not to mention, he was going to be using his own time and resources, which was why it was allowed. Chen Shang wanted to practice, which made many who were preparing to leave immediately halt their footsteps. Chen Shang refining dans was a pleasure to watch. They could watch dans in the transparent furnace as they were being formed. Moreover, the process was very frequent and very beautiful. In particular, those herbal spirit qi exuding colorful lights almost seemed like they were dancing. He is finished. This little rascal wanted me to take him back to the extreme martial sect to get the azure profound fruit. At that time, I had one on me and gave it to him. Lu Menjie suddenly thought of this and then lightly stamped her foot. She was regretting her decision to not take Chen Shang back to the extreme martial sect, otherwise he would not be lacking the azure profound fruit right now. Lu Menjie learned from Hua Shangyu how Chen Shang became 5th level alchemist. She knew he could only refine the building foundation Dan, the elemental spirit Dan and the 100 beasts Dan. This accounted for 3 kinds of low-grade profound level Dans, and during the assessment Chen Shang had already used that lone azure profound fruit from Lu Menjie. I don't think he has the herbs for the elemental spirit Dan. Lu Menjie was extremely worried. She looked restless. Hua Shangyu was also a little surprised. You gave him the azure profound fruit. He's in trouble. If he don't have the azure profound fruit, he can't refine the building foundation Dan. I hope he has the herbs of elemental spirit Dan and the 100 beasts Dan upon him at least. Maybe he could win by the virtue of these 2 Dans. The elemental spirit Dan is much more difficult than the 100 beasts Dan. I don't know whether he can hold on or not. He should be trying to familiarize himself with that alchemy technique from before. Chen Shang was already running the refining simulation of true elemental Dan in his mind, but he was only refining in his imagination. Of course, he was successful in the end, but now it was time for the real stuff. He quickly processed the herbs of the true elemental Dans. Thankfully he had a lot of these herbs on hand. And after he was finished processing the herbs, he released the illusionary brilliant furnace, and then placed the herbs inside. At the same time, he had already began running the simulation, moreover a step ahead. The shape and size of these herbs, the texture upon the herbs had all been simulated in his mind. Even the entire square, the environment all around him, along with the sounds from the audience had been simulated. He placed both his hands upon the fire entrance, and began pouring the flames inside. While the simulation was a bit faster in his mind, he had already began incinerating the herbs. If no problem arose during the refining simulation in his mind, he would refine in accordance with the refining simulation. Temperature or everything else, everything would all be same as in the refining simulation. Soon, Chen Shang deeply felt the formidability of the refining simulation technique. Unexpectedly, everything was exactly the same as expected. What happened inside the alchemical furnace was exactly the same as what he had simulated in his mind. Chen Shang was refining the true elemental Dan. This was a most commonly used Dan by many. Nobody expected they would be able to see how it was being refined today. The herbal spirit qi of the true elemental Dan were also colorful. After they had been incinerated by the flames, they rose to the top. Various colorful herbal spirit qis sometimes intertwined, some repelled. The flames too were sometimes large and fierce, yet the next moment they were small and fine. Unexpectedly, sometimes the flames were not even present. The various changes occurring inside the furnace were the same as the changes transpiring in the refining simulation running in Chen Zhang's mind. Even the various movements of those herbal spirit qi were exactly the same. At this point, Chen Shang truly felt as if he was looking what was happening inside his own alchemical furnace early on. In reality, he was only refining the Dan once, but for him it seemed he was experiencing the same thing twice. It was a very magical feeling. The 7th level alchemists all intently stared at Chen Zhang's transparent furnace. They wanted to have a look how Chen Shang was refining the true elemental Dan without using any spirit crystal essence, but they could not notice anything out of the ordinary. This was because Chen Shang had poured in a large amount of water attribute true qi inside, which transformed into an invisible mist, wrapped around those herbal powder inside, rendering it impossible for anyone to see. In less than half an hour, Chen Shang had refined a set of true elemental Dans. He had slowed down his speed in order to cooperate with the refining simulation technique. After he had finished refining one set, he continued refining. He wanted to familiarize himself with the refining simulation technique. Only then could he run the refining simulation for more complex Dans. To everyone's dismay, Chen Shang kept on refining the true elemental Dans without stop. From the evening to the late night, he had been refining. He had almost refined 30 sets, moreover, each set of 5 dans, and as usual all of top-grade quality. His alchemy skills had already left many in deep admiration. Some alchemists held an even deeper respect for Chen Shang, which was apparent in their eyes. I knew it, little rascal, your talent is very good. You have already grasped this technique in such a short while. However, you should know, when refining the 5 elements true elemental dan, the difficulty will rise many times compared with the true elemental dan. At that time, the consumption of your divine sense and your power will also be a lot more. Su Meiyao praised before reminding Chen Shang to not take his future task lightly. Next, refine the 100 beasts dan, and then the elemental spirit dan. Use the refining simulation technique for these 2 dans, before finally refining the 5 elements true elemental dan. Although Su Meiyao didn't show any surprise on the surface, deep within her heart she was extremely shocked. In the past, she had taken many years in order to master this technique. Although Chen Shang had only ran the refining simulation for the dan he was most familiar with, there was no doubt he had already crossed the threshold because his refining in reality was exactly the same as the refining simulation. This was clear proof that Chen Shang was beginning to master this technique. Seeing Chen Shang take out the herbs of 100 beasts dan, everyone was suddenly excited. It was quite clear that Chen Shang was now going to compete and finish his 2 other dans soon. However, he had already used a lot of time for practicing, and only about 3 hours were left before the sunrise. Everyone was even more curious, which 3 kinds of low-grade profound level dans was Chen Shang going to refine. This had always been a secret, even Mrs. Li was not aware of it. The invigilating alchemists had kept everything confidential. A lot of people had already left the square, only a few people remained, majority of which were the alchemists. Obviously, Yun Xiaodao and the others would stay. They all sat closely to the stage, watching the furnace exuding 5-color rays. Lian Yingxiao was together with Ji Yu Dongchen and Wu Keiming. They were all very interested in the final results. After all, Chen Shang was the young man they most admired. Dean Lian, you better control your son. I'm telling you, this brat fear nothing on heaven or on earth. If angered, he would even dare to slaughter the emperor's son. Ji Yu Dongchen said. His tone was very serious. He was warning Lian Yingxiao that if one day, because of the wrongdoings of his son, if he made a move on Chen Shang first, Ji Yu Dongchen would definitely stand beside Chen Shang. After returning, I'll strictly discipline him. Even I'm afraid of Chen Zhang's slaughter qi. How the hell did this brat kill so many people at such a young age to possess such a frightening amount of slaughter qi? Lian Yingxiao solemnly exclaimed and nodded. He didn't doubt Ji Yu Dongchen's words for a second. Later, when you learn of everyone he killed like he was slaughtering cattle, it will definitely scare the hell out of you. Ji Yu Dongchen said while laughing. Everyone happened to believe that the dean and the elder of the beast martial sect, as well as those Nirvana realm martial artists of the true martial sect, had all been killed by Ji Yu Dongchen. But the fact was, it was all due to Chen Shang. Ji Yu Dongchen could be regarded as Chen Zhang's scapegoat in this matter, but he carried it very honorably. Chapter 315, A Step Further. A step further. Everyone has watched Chen Shang refine 100 beasts dan, but now especially in the evening they felt it was even more stunning. The colorful beautiful rays radiating from the transparent furnace were even more dazzling. It made the onlookers feel intoxicated. Chen Shang was running the refining simulation of 100 beasts dan in his mind. Although the process was somewhat complex, but he could still see every fine detail in his mind. His refining simulation was exactly similar to his refining in reality. In less than an hour, Chen Shang had successfully refined a set of 100 beasts dan. Start refining the elemental spirit dan. Su Meiyao's tone turned a little grim, because the elemental spirit dan was a lot more difficult to refine compared to the 100 beasts dan. Moreover, its requirement for divine sense was very high. Most of all, its alchemy process was quite a lot different compared with other common dans. After watching Chen Shang complete the refining of the 100 beasts dan, everyone in the square cheered up, for everyone was extremely curious as to what second low-grade profound level dan was Chen Shang going to refine. Everyone saw Chen Shang take out a spiral-shaped white grass and a thumb-sized flower. Once these 2 spirit herbs were taken out, many were discussing about it in succession, particularly the alchemists, because they had never seen those herbs. Those 7th-level alchemists were also discussing in low voice. According to their knowledge, these herbs were not for refining common dans, it should be some unconventional dan. Qianqin, what is he refining? Yao Haisheng asked. He knew Wu Qianqin had been learning alchemy from Elder Dan, Not to mention she was very close with Chen Shang, he guessed she should know about it. Yun Xiaodao, Shu Weilong and the others all turned their heads and looked at Wu Qianchen, waiting for her reply. Wu Qianchen has been skimming through the memory in her mind, but she did not find any information related to these two herbs. She slightly shook her head and replied, I also have no idea. Dean, you are knowledgeable, do you recognize what is it? Wu Kaming asked. I don't know. Ji Yu Dongchen also had a pondering look on his face. He was recalling all the herbs he knew in the past 10,000 years. He gazed at Lian Yingxiao next to him. Dean Lian, you are a lunatic collector, do you know what it is? Lian Yingxiao shook his head and said, I have no idea, it seems we should wait till the end for the announcement. When everyone was in anticipation to know the answer, an arrogant yet an enthusiastic voice came over. It is the divine spirit flower and the raising soul grass, these are the herbs for refining elemental spirit Dan. Hearing this voice, the entire square suddenly broke into argy-bargy and low and deep voices. To everyone's surprise, it was the elemental spirit Dan, rendering everyone to think of the elemental spirit Dan from before, which had once appeared in the Danxiang Tower, and then again in the auction. And finally sold at a hefty price of 50 million crystal stones. This is Yu Zhonglin's voice. It seems that the elemental spirit Dan from the auction was refined by Chen Shang. This guy had been screwed over completely, he must be fuming in anger. Ji Yu Dongchen said while laughing. Lian Yingxiao and Wu Kaming too bursted into laughter. At the same time they were surprised that Chen Shang could unexpectedly refine such a difficult Dan, moreover, also could find such rare and precious herbs. Yu Zhonglin, this guy still has not returned to give the elemental spirit Dan to his son. I presume he wanted to see whether or not he could find the person who screwed him off of his 50 million crystal stones. Hua Shangyu said with a mischievous smile. Lu Menjie too had a naughty smile hanging on her face, as they too were the participants in swindling Yu Zhonglin. Hua Shangyu and Lu Menjie heaved a sigh of relief, because Chen Shang had the herbs of elemental spirit Dan. This meant that Chen Shang still had the chance to win the first place. Zhu Rong enviously looked at Chen Shang. So it was younger brother Chen's elemental spirit Dan. After returning I'm going to make sure to get a treat from our rich friend. 50 million crystal stones even for these family juniors was considered a fairly large sum. Yun Xiaodao and the others were making preparation for a big treat. But they all didn't know that Chen Shang had spent it entirely for buying the dragon soul. Chen Shang happened to be refining the elemental spirit Dan. Realizing this, the eyes of every alchemist lit up. For them it was a rare sight, because they would be able to clearly witness the entire refining process of the elemental spirit Dan, although they were not sure whether or not Chen Shang would be able to last till the end and be successful. Chen Shang processed the herbs before placing them inside the furnace. This was his first time using the illusionary brilliant furnace to refine such a difficult Dan, and also his first time using the refining simulation technique. Moreover, the deductions he would have to run in refining simulation would be much more. Because when refining the elemental spirit Dan, the herbal spirit chi would need to assimilate with his divine sense, and the assimilated amount needs to be taken in count during the refining simulation. But as he had already refined the elemental spirit Dan in the past, it would not be very difficult for him. He could run the refining simulation according to his memory. But, if he was refining those high-level Dans which he had never refined, it would be difficult for him to run the refining simulation. Instead, the most needed would be his sense of perception. His perception would show up while precepting during the refining simulation, then according to the error occurred in the refining simulation he could correct those errors in the reality. This was the essence of the refining simulation technique. It needed an extraordinary perception and powerful divine sense to support. There were variety of aged auxiliary herbs. Chen Shang needed to make an accurate estimation depending on the age of those herbs, only then could he carry out the refining simulation. Everyone could see, after a large number of herbs were burned under the intense flames, one after another dazzling glows surged out. In the middle of the night it was extremely beautiful. Chen Zhang's transparent furnace was as if it was bearing a peerless treasure inside, making everyone marvel again and again, and making everyone in audience feel it was worth watching the tournament overnight. At this point, a frown appeared on Chen Zhang's forehead, and he became extremely serious. Because he must pay attention to the situation inside the illusionary brilliant furnace, he must control the flames, must use the divine sense to suppress those tyrannical herbal spirit chis, must control the illusionary brilliant furnace congealed out of the mana, and simultaneously he must do exactly same things in the refining simulation, which was quite taxing, and exactly for this the refining simulation technique indeed had a very high requirements. Presently for Chen Shang it was like refining the elemental spirit Dan in two different furnaces at the same time. Yet it was more difficult than to simultaneously refine in two furnaces, because in his mind he must precisely carry out the refining simulation. The visualization must be similar to that of reality. If some problem occurred in the simulation, then he would have to make the following adjustments in reality. In his visualization he had to make sure he crossed the T's and dot the I's, otherwise if the visualization in itself was wrong, then it would lead to failure. Therefore, in order to reduce the failure, the refining simulation could not be too fast, yet it needs to a bit faster than the reality. Suddenly, Chen Shang knit his eyebrows. The things he was expecting finally happened, because in the refining simulation of the elemental spirit Dan a problem appeared, which led to an immediate failure, and the furnace happened to blew up. The instant he found the problem, he quickly calmed down. The furnace blew up because he had allowed the herbal spirit cheese to assimilate too much with his divine sense. He immediately made the adjustment, and stopped those ownerless herbal spirit cheese from absorbing too much divine sense. This way, he rectified the problem arose during the refining simulation in his mind. After he had successfully rectified the mistake, once again in Chen Zhang's mind appeared another furnace of elemental spirit Dan, and he once again began carrying out another refining simulation, but this refining simulation started from the point where he had rectified the mistake. This allowed him to once again experience the fierceness of the refining simulation technique. If the refining simulation was correct, he could know where he was making a mistake in advance, and then he could rectify it. Other only thought that Chen Shang was only concentrating in alchemy, and it was very difficult. However, nobody knew Chen Shang was learning another alchemy technique. However, everyone watched him in relish. Those alchemists watched him even more dumbfoundedly, because they could watch the refining of the legendary most difficult to refine elemental spirit Dan. Chapter 316, Potential. Potential. Only those alchemists who had a certain basic knowledge were able to detect what made it difficult for the elemental spirit Dan to refine. They noticed that those rising dense herbal spirit cheese were absorbing something, and after absorbing their amount would increase by a lot, then they would once again be compressed by Chen Shang, lest the herbal spirit cheese expand because of their increasing mass. These herbal spirit cheese were also somewhat similar to the spiritual power. However, the spirit inside the herbs was pure, uncontrolled yet very oppressive. So it was like this little rascal had truly opened my outlook, really made me admire him. No wonder, an honorable empress like you will have a soft spot for this little rascal. Hua Shangyu mischievously said with a smile. She had been staring at Chen Zhang's transparent alchemical furnace. She too was an alchemist, but she had not refined the elemental spirit Dan, so of course, she would intently observe the refining process. Lu Menger tenderly scoffed and said, "Aren't you too? Are you jealous? Worried that I'll steal him?" A charming smile appeared on Hua Shangyu's face, as she replied while stroking the silky hairs draped over Lu Menger's bosom. "If you can steal him, consider it your win." Lu Menger stuck out her tongue, her pretty eyes glistened with a complex look. While looking at Chen Zhang's serious and handsome face, she couldn't help but admit, she really liked this little rascal. Bit by bit time slowly passed away. The originally glittering in colorful lights illusionary brilliant furnace of Chen Shang, now after the fusion, the herbal spirit cheese turned into a dazzling white light. Moreover, all the fused herbal powder and the herbal spirit cheese had been divided by Chen Shang into 3 groups. Much to everyone's dismay, Chen Shang was going to refine 3 elemental spirit Dan, which once again scared the hell out of every other alchemists. From the records, they remembered only 1 Dan was possible from 1 set of herbs. However, Chen Shang had subverted their knowledge, and was even refining 3. Everyone who knew about alchemy, knew if they wanted to refine many Dans at once, they need to retain some of the herbal spirit chi and herbal powder, and need powerful divine sense to suppress the instability which would occur during the solidification process of many Dans. If during the solidification process, even 1 Dan was unsuccessful, then the entire batch would fail. In order to ensure success, many alchemists would choose to let out a part of herbal spirit chi and herbal powder from the vent of the alchemical furnace. This way, although the Dans would be less, at least they would be successful. They would not waste these precious herbs. This was also written in many textbooks of alchemy, and over time, alchemists happened to believe this was a matter of course. But Chen Shang rarely implemented this. That was why the Dans he refined happened to be a lot in number, and also of top quality. Inside the illusionary brilliant furnace everything was happening same as Chen Shang has visualized in his refining simulation. It was exactly the same, which made Chen Shang even more familiar with a kind of foreseeing feeling. So long as he could grasp this feeling, it would then take him 1 step closer to mastering the refining simulation technique, this superb alchemy technique. Chen Zhang's refining 3 Dans was also for the sake of increasing the price a bit. even if he failed in refining the 5 elements true elemental Dan, he would still have the opportunity to win first. If he could refine the building foundation Dans, he was sure he would be able to obtain victory. If not for him not carrying the Azure Profound fruit with him, he'd probably have finished the 3 low-grade Profound level Dans. Moreover, refining a set of 4 building foundation Dans would have scared a bunch of alchemists. Now the dawn was just an hour away, and inside the transparent furnace of Chen Shang, the 3 groups of massive cheese shining in white light, after a burst of violent jolt, suddenly started gathering together. The mass of cheese started rotating insanely as they slowly began to contract, before the prototype of Dans appeared. At this point everyone was watching anxiously, while in the simulation the refining of the 3 elemental spirit Dans had already been finished. He for the first time had refined 3 elemental spirit Dans, and only because he had learned the refining simulation technique, he dared to try. This kind of success made him feel a kind of inexplicable joy. The 3 elemental spirit Dans had been successfully refined. As Chen Shang held them in his palm, upon his serious face a sliver of smile appeared. On the other hand, the other 14 alchemists on the stage felt a lot of pressure. Chen Shang refining the unconventional elemental spirit Dan was totally out of their expectation. Moreover, it was 3 at once. They had heard that during the auction, 1 elemental spirit Dan sold for 50 million crystal stones. If its value was calculated in accordance with this, they would definitely lose. Last time this little rascal could only refine 2, not to mention he was using that powerful furnace of his to refine. Now he had not even relied on any alchemical furnace, yet he has refined 3 Dans. I've really squeezed out his potential. Hua Xiangyu's face was filled with a smug smile. She felt she had done a good thing. Now her mood was as if she was guiding a proud disciple, and this disciple had also performed very amazingly. Chen Shang now felt very grateful to this seductress, Hua Xiangyu. He suddenly understood why Hua Xiangyu intentionally made him draw the tattered alchemical furnace. It was all deliberately done in order to make him get rid of his dependence on the brilliant flame dragon furnace. Chen Shang speculated the last 2 games had all been arranged by Hua Xiangyu, because during the last assessment, he felt that the secret of his brilliant flame dragon furnace had been exposed. His speculation was not far from target. It was also because of this that he was having a kind of strange feeling. This brat is definitely going to refine the building foundation Dan. His swindling had made me suffer miserably. Ji Yu Dongchen wanted to cry but he had no tears. Thinking of spending 20 million crystal stones to buy 10 building foundation Dans, his heart once again secretly throbbed in pain. Brother Ji Yu, you mean to say the 10 building foundation Dans in the auction was his? Lian Yingxiao asked. He was slightly shocked. Yes. Ji Yu Dongchen sighed and said. Strange, when you were bidding for the building foundation Dan, Lu Menger was increasing the price with you. Even when Yu Zhonglin was bidding for elemental spirit Dan, Lu Menger was also competing. As far as I know, Lu Menger's apprentice Shui Shenxian is Chen Zhang's wife, among them. Lian Yingxiao's words shocked Ji Yu Dongchen. Ji Yu Dongchen clenched his fist and cursed. This brat definitely must have instigated Lu Menger to increase the price. Lu Menger is a very proud woman, why can this brat break a deal with her? Wu Keiming also felt it was highly likely. Yu Xiongling had been swindled most miserably. Chen Shang must have guessed Yu Xiongling will definitely buy the elemental spirit Dan, so he must have asked Lu Menger to continue increasing the price. I know Lu Menger the best. When I was pursuing her, she didn't even pay any attention to me. I have stalked her for thousands of years. It was still the same. She will never do such kind of things. Is it because of her beloved disciple? Lian Yingxiao said. Ji Yu Dongchen and Wu Keiming also could not understand. An honorable empress, how could she mix in with their insidious young martial uncle, and do such wicked deeds? It should be known that Lu Menger was not lacking crystal stones or true elemental Dans or any other thing. They had no choice but to ask about it later. Lian Yingxiao was now even more shocked with Chen Zhang's ability. Much to his dismay, Chen Shang was even able to move Lu Menger. In the past he had invited Lu Menger to his birthday, but Lu Menger never came. It seems I have to manage my Lotus Islands people. I cannot allow them to offend Chen Shang. This brat is too terrifying. Lian Yingxiao muttered, because he knew Lu Menger's character. If Chen Shang could make Lu Menger lower herself and do illegal things, then he could also ask Lu Menger to fight for him too. Chapter 317, Challenging the Limit. Challenging the Limit. Show TL note. Chen Shang placed all the 100 beasts and elemental spirit Dans into a box, which had also been specially prepared by the Danxiang Taoyuan in order to prevent cheating. After he finished refining the elemental spirit Dan, Chen Shang closed his eyes to recover his strength and spirit he had consumed a while ago, because he had to next refine the 5 elements true elemental Dan. During the auction, he had bought 2 5-color profound fruit, and later Elder Dan had given him 5-color lotus seed, colorless lingzi and 5-leaf grass, 2 of each. In other words, he had 2 of each herb, but he could only refine a single set because he must keep the other set for planting. Now, others once again began to speculate which low-grade profound level Dan was Chen Shang going to refine. Many of them reckoned it was the building foundation Dan, in particular Yun Xiaodao, Zhu Rong and the others. They had all obtained a lot of building foundation Dans from Chen Shang. But, if he had the azure profound fruit, then he would have already begun refining. Is he still going to refine? He doesn't have the azure profound fruit. If he had it, he would have already began refining the building foundation Dan. The building foundation Dan is even easier to refine compared to the elemental spirit Dan. Lu Menjie doubtfully said. Hua Shangyu, glancing at resting Chen Shang, started frowning. Her face was filled with an inexplicable seriousness, moreover, also a little surprise. It seemed as if she caught sight of something, but she could not confirm. What? Lu Menjie, noticing Hua Shangyu's complexion, suddenly asked. I'm not sure, I've to look again. Who the hell taught him these alchemy techniques? He unexpectedly arrived at this point. Hua Shangyu shook her head and said. Suddenly, she saw Chen Shang came up with a lot of herbs, her pupil fiercely contracted, her tender body slightly shocked, her breath turned extremely rapid. Impossible, have this brat accomplished that step? Seeing the astonishing change in Hua Shangyu's complexion, Lu Menjie could tell Chen Shang was definitely going to do something astonishing. She asked, isn't that the 5-color profound fruit he had bought in the auction? There are still some other herbs. Are they the materials for the 5 elements true elemental Dan? Hua Shangyu took in a long deep breath, closed her pretty eyes, nodded her head. Yes, that is 5-color lotus seed, colorless lingzi, 5-leaf grass. He certainly had not refined the 5 elements true elemental Dan before, but now he wants to try. What? Lu Menjie was surprised. Her complexion also took a turn. He wants to refine a Dan he had never refined. Under this situation, does he know the refining simulation technique that you spoke of? That's why I'm suspicious. If he knew the refining simulation technique, then he must have an alchemist with extraordinary alchemy techniques guiding him from the back. Some alchemist with good insight, with one glance recognized those dazzling 5-color herbs Chen Shang had taken out, making a bunch of alchemists discuss in low voice. 5 elements true elemental Dan was the most favorite Dan for geniuses possessing multiple veins. For martial artists with multiple veins it was greatly advantageous. Rumor had it, a 5 elements true elemental Dan could allow a first-level true martial realm martial artist to advance to second level. Such was the amount of true chi contained inside it. Even the martial artists who didn't have multiple veins could still take it, because after the 5 elements true elemental Dan had been congealed, it would produce a kind of very special kind of true chi. Chen Shang speculated this unique true chi was precisely the universe true chi. This kind of true chi was indeed extremely mystical. It could very easily be assimilated into any kind attribute, such as, after his 5 elements true chis were fused, it could be applied to the azure dragon slaughtering devil blade, yet could release powerful wood attribute true chi, and its strength would be several times before the fusion. In the auction the 5-color profound fruit definitely must have been bought by this brat. Lian Yingxiao said. At that time he was competing with Chen Shang. The 5 elements true elemental Dan is rather more expensive than building foundation Dan. It also comparatively sought after thing in the auction. If taken a few of them, then it can make its user to breakthrough. It is also known as King Dan among the low-grade profound level Dans. Ji Yu Dongchen exclaimed. The 5 elements true elemental Dan's herbs weren't so rare as that of elemental spirit Dan. Now and then they would appear in the Chenwu mainland. Because of this many alchemists rather had some understanding on the 5 elements true elemental Dan. Chen Shang began processing the 5 elements true elemental Dan's herbs. Beside the 4 main herbs, there were still some other auxiliary herbs with more than 3,000 years of age. Generally the auxiliary herbs were ginseng, lingzi-like things with a large number of pure spirit qi contained in it. Chen Shang processed the herbs a little slowly, not as proficiently as before. Everybody could tell he was not familiar with the herbs. Other couldn't help but doubt whether or not he had refined the 5 elements true elemental Dan. One must know the herbs of the 5 elements true elemental Dan were as precious and rare as the herbs of the building foundation Dan, but the difficulty to refine it was same as the elemental spirit Dan. With one set of herbs the number of Dans which could be refined was similar to the 100 beasts Dan, 6 or 7. If Chen Shang could successfully refine the 5 elements true elemental Dan, there was no doubt he would be getting first. At this time, one after another, all the other alchemists on the stage finished refining. All these alchemists had refined the 100 beasts Dan. Their alchemical furnaces were very simple and crude. The success rate of refining the 100 beasts Dan was rather high, and then refined some unconventional Dans, some of which were costlier while some were cheaper. They were not like Chen Shang, who could take out so many rare and precious herbs to refine some noble low-grade profound level Dans. These alchemists were indeed in 6th level. They could all successfully finished, and not one of them had their furnace explode, or any failure. After all, they had refined a massive amount of Dans, all of them had certain strength. Only Chen Shang was not finished. He had not refined the final low-grade profound level Dan, and the time was pressing. It would very soon be over. They could unexpectedly watch someone refine the 5 elements true elemental Dan, which made these alchemists' hearts throb rapidly with emotions. They could not control themselves, yet all of them didn't know. Chen Shang was refining the 5 elements true elemental Dan for the very first time. He was under a huge amount of pressure. The alchemists on stage naturally didn't want Chen Shang to be successful, otherwise they would not have the opportunity to win. This little rascal is truly going to refine the 5 elements true elemental Dan for the first time. He is really daring. If he is successful, then he would have grasped the essence of refining simulation technique. Hua Shangyu frowned. When she had to learn the refining simulation technique, she had to suffer a lot of bitterness. While Chen Shang had not even reached 30, he had already started learning. She felt very jealous of Chen Zhang's talent. When Chen Shang was resting a while ago, he had been carefully listening to Su Meiyao describing the essentials of refining the 5 elements true elemental Dan. Only now was she finished speaking, and now, he was also finished processing the herbs. He was slowly processing the herbs. It was all to meticulously observe those herbs using his divine sense. He must thoroughly understand these herbs. Only then could he carry out an accurate refining simulation. Now he felt it was just about enough. He slightly took a deep breath, and released the illusionary brilliant furnace. Watching Chen Shang stopped processing the herbs, everyone knew he was ready. Everyone holding their breath, watched carefully. They were worried they would miss some details, because this kind of scene was rarely seen. Maybe in their life they could only see it once. Hua Shangyu and Lu Menjie were also very tensed. If Chen Shang had truly mastered the refining simulation technique, such kind of talent was very heaven-defying. The same was true for Su Meiyao, Bai Yuyu and Long Shuiyi. All of them were a little tensed. The entire square was suddenly enveloped in a very stifling and tensed atmosphere, making it difficult to breathe. Chapter 318. The Magical Effect of Mana. The Magical Effect of Mana. Show TL note. After placing the herbs inside the illusionary brilliant furnace, Chen Shang immediately released the flames. At the same time, he had also released all of his divine sense to wrap the alchemical furnace in order to sense the tiniest bit of changes taking place inside it. As these changes passed into his mind, he also began carrying out the refining simulation. With his brain operating to the utmost, he executed various calculations which was very taxing to his mind. Not long after carrying out the refining simulation in his mind, a problem had already appeared. Because the flames were too big, they were not uniform, and hence it led to the burning of the auxiliary herbs into ashes. Even the main herbs weren't spared. They too were not uniformly heated, and soon half of the herbs were about to be destroyed. After knowing this kind of error was going to take place, Chen Shang quickly adjusted the flames in accordance to the error in the refining simulation. His reaction was needed to be extremely quick. If it was even a little bit slower, it would then lead to failure. After the adjustment, he successfully modified the refining simulation from the point where the error took place. Meanwhile, in accordance with the present situation, he once again ran the refining simulation in order to predict what would happen next and have enough time to carry out the adjustments. By rectifying dangerous errors, Chen Shang was able to avoid the tragedies that took place in the refining simulation. Chen Shang had only started for a short while, but he had already encountered dozens of problems, all of which he had rectified at the most critical point, making him feel extremely tired. At this point, he also felt a slight headache. It was his first time refining the 5 elements true elemental Dan, so during the refining simulation, there were too many aspects involved. Because of that, he could not help but increase his speed of deduction, and exactly for this, in terms of the mental aspect, the refining simulation technique had very high requirements. In the transparent alchemical furnace, the 5 colored auras were even more dazzling, as if there was a small sun in front of audience's eyes. This made it difficult for everyone to watch what was happening at the center of the dazzling lights. Presently, the sky was still dark, yet when the light emitted from Chen Zhang's alchemy illuminated the whole square, it was as if it was still daytime. What made everyone feel surprised the most was the fact that the aura unexpectedly made everyone feel extremely comfortable. It had a kind of inexplicable warmth. The main ingredients of the 5 elements true elemental Dan were highly resistant to heat. They were required to be burned for a long duration. In addition, those auxiliary herbs were too susceptible to the heat, so they could not be heated too much. This was the most crucial point which should be duly noted while refining the 5 elements true elemental Dan. However, this was not the difficult point for Chen Shang because he had the heavenly sunfire spirit. In a very short time, he had already incinerated the 4 main herbs, and this process had also occurred at the very same moment when the auxiliary herbs were incinerated into herbal powder. Then he mixed them together with the herbal powder of the main ingredients. Suddenly, Chen Zhang's body slightly shook while his body was drenched in sweat. In the refining simulation, the furnace happened to have exploded when he was fusing the 5 different attributed true qi. The divine sense he had released was not strong enough, leading to heretical movements of the tyrannical herbal spirit qis. The herbal spirit qis broke out of their restraints, causing them to become uncontrollable, and thereby causing the destruction of the whole alchemical furnace. At this point, Chen Shang felt that he didn't have enough divine sense left for use because he had to maintain the illusionary brilliant furnace too. Just when he thought it was over for him, he immediately released the mana which bounded those tyrannical herbal spirit qi. Without trying, one would never know about the final outcome. Much to Chen Zhang's surprise, the mana was unexpectedly so powerful that in an instant, it suppressed those herbal spirit qi and made them docile and obedient. But he didn't continue to use mana in alchemy, because he didn't completely understand the characteristics of mana. It would be difficult to carry out the refining simulation without knowing all the characteristics of mana. As such, he could only continue to use divine sense. Although he knew that the mana was definitely better than the divine sense in alchemy, at present, he couldn't try it with ease because the 5 elements true elemental Dan was already halfway done. He could not take it lightly. After crossing the hurdle, Chen Shang heaved a sigh of relief. In his mind, he once again quickly ran the refining simulation as he continued suppressing those tyrannical herbal spirit qi with his divine sense. Now he must use the appropriate flames to refine the various herbal spirit qis and herbal powders to completely fuse them together. The 5 elements true elemental Dan was rather different from the previously refined Dans. When refining other Dans, the herbal spirit qis released from the various herbs, although they repelled each other, had the same attribute. But as for the 5 elements true elemental Dan he was refining, it had 5 attributes which were mutually exclusive. That was why it was even harder to fuse them. When Chen Shang was running the refining simulation, he encountered endless problems because the flames had to be extremely precise, and so he also continued to adjust, ran new refining simulation, then adjust once again. Afterwards, he would begin a new refining simulation. Such continuous cycle was quite taxing for him, evidently represented by the veins on his forehead which had already started bulging. He was now experiencing an excruciating headache, yet he must continue to endure. If not, then maybe because of the pain, he might make a mistake in the refining simulation and lose everything. This brat had really learned the refining simulation technique. Who in hell is his teacher? But from the looks of it, he must be using it for an unfamiliar Dan for the first time. I hope he can endure till the end. Hua Shangyu, from Chen Zhang's expressions, was sure that Chen Shang was suffering in agony from making those continuous adjustments and running new refining simulations one after the other. His skill seemed to be dull and dry. If one is not familiar with the process, then one would only feel a headache. It was Chen Zhang's first time experiencing such consumption of his spirit, but still had to continue the adjustments and the refining simulations again and again. Of course he could no longer endure. He had already spent too much of his divine sense, and he was not used to it. Chen Shang felt time was passing very slowly. He could not wait to end this painful and tedious process at once. At this point, the sky was already a little bright, but the audience hadn't even noticed it because the light released from Chen Zhang's alchemical furnace were extremely dazzling. Chen Shang had no idea how long had passed. He just kept on doing those 2 things over and over again. Suddenly, Chen Zhang's mind was jolted because the visualized furnace in his mind had suddenly lost its aura. Only the flickering flames were left in the furnace, and the rest of the things were completely transparent. Seeing this, Chen Shang knew he was halfway done. Now he could finally end the painful journey. Everyone had just adjusted to those dazzling auras, but the sudden disappearance of the aura left only darkness in front of their eyes. Only a weak, flickering firelight originating from the furnace was left. After the herbal spirit cheese of 5 attributes had been fused, they had turned invisible and colorless. No matter how good their eyes were, it was difficult to see, and Chen Xiangtu could only feel. Regardless if it was the herbal powder or the herbal spirit qi, all had disappeared. Neither too big nor too small flames were only burning at the central layer of the transparent alchemical furnace. At this time, Chen Xiang knew that it was time to congeal the Dan. During the refining simulation in his mind, he once again perceived the explosion of the furnace because his divine sense wasn't adequate. In the moment of desperation, he once again released the mystical mana like last time, and using the mana, he squeezed the invisible herbal powder and the herbal spirit qi together. He fused them in an instant, and at the same time, he quickly used the mana to divide that large transparent mass of qi into 10 parts before finally withdrawing the mana. After realizing the mystical effects of mana, Chen Xiang was brimming in happiness, because using mana instead of divine sense was a lot better. Even if he had adequate divine sense, it would still take him some time to finish, but with mana, it was finished in an instant. 10 transparent cyclones started rotating in varying speed as he continued to run the refining simulation in his mind. Even if he had arrived at the last step, he had still encountered a series of errors, because during the solidification of Dan, he must use his divine sense to uniformly squeeze those cyclone and congeal the Dan out of these cyclones. In a short while, the furnace had already exploded a dozen of times in his mind, but in timely moments, he had quickly rectified those problems in reality. Because of which, nothing had happened in reality. Dawn has already arrived, and the sunlight shone upon the square. Mrs. Li also had no idea if Chen Xiang was finished refining or not, but according to the rules, she must call a stop to the tournament. Finished. Chen Xiang suddenly drew a long deep breath, then laid down on the ground facing the sky. He was too tired to even move. As the sunlight shone upon the transparent alchemical furnace, the 10 exquisite Dans suddenly glittered with a faint gloss. Everyone with good eyesight realized that Chen Xiang had finished refining the 5 elements true elemental Dan. Chapter 319, Xiao Ziliang. Xiao Ziliang, sorry for the delay, still traveling around. So there is delay in translating. For consistent release you have to wait till 31st of Jan. With regards, Ash. Chen Xiang retracted the illusionary brilliant furnace. From his face, it was quite clear that he was completely exhausted. He quickly swallowed a few true elemental Dan to replenish himself, lest he found himself in an unexpected situation. A 5 elements true elemental Dan was worth at least 1,000,000 crystal stones, 10 would be worth 10 millions or so. In addition, there were also 3 elemental spirit Dans and 1,000 beast Dans. With such amount, Chen Xiang winning the tournament was already irrefutable. Although those 7th-level old alchemists and Mrs. Li had seen Chen Xiang refine the 3 different low-grade profound-level Dans with their own eyes, they still had to check it. As a matter of fact, they even more wished to have a look at the Dan refined by Chen Xiang. After Chen Zhang's true qis of the 5 elements had been fused, they would turn into the invisible and colorless universe true qi. The same was true for the 5 elements true elemental Dans. They looked completely transparent and were only the size of a thumb, however, the true qi they contained was extremely huge in quantity. This little rascal has succeeded. He had already crossed the first threshold of the refining simulation technique. He will definitely become a high-level alchemist, it is just a matter of time. Hua Shangyu said, her tone was filled with emotion. There was no need to check, Chen Xiang was directly declared as the winner. Although the other alchemists felt unhappy, they had not choice but to concede. The total value of Dans refined by Chen Xiang was definitely the top, and if they went to argue, they would only bring disgrace upon themselves. The first price was the 10 drops of 10,000 years old spirit milk. Since Chen Xiang currently didn't know the true use of 10,000 years old spirit milk, he didn't put it in his mind. He wanted to be the winner just for the fame. When he previously walked up to the high-rank tournament stage, the 6th-level alchemists on the stage didn't take him seriously. Even among the audiences, many believed that he was just a low 5th-level alchemist whose defeat was already inevitable. But now, he had actually become the winner of the tournament, moreover, he had won very beautifully. His alchemy technique was not only superb, he had even portrayed it very vividly. His amazing skills had shook everyone's heart again and again. From now on, he would become a legend of the Danxiang Taoyuan Grand Meeting. Under the stage, Yun Xiaodao, Zhu Rong and the others were all cheering for Chen Xiang. They felt lucky to be friends with an alchemist who had an immeasurable future. At the very least, they didn't need to be worried about searching an alchemist to refine a few dans for themselves. The winner of the high-rank tournament is Chen Shang. This marks the end of the alchemy tournament, but the grand meeting will continue. On the stage, Mrs. Li gave a speech, while Chen Shang, after obtaining the spirit milk, sat down on the ground to quickly adjust his state. For many years he had often encountered various types of dangers, and because of that, he had developed this prudent habit. Chen Shang, I'm a disciple of the free immortal sea, have you ever killed a disciple of our free immortal sea? A participant on the stage loudly asked, causing quite an uproar among the audiences. The free immortal sea currently had a very good reputation because they had been claiming that they were a lot stronger than the extreme martial sect. Chen Shang offending the free immortal sea was nothing surprising, but no one had thought that the free immortal sea would sought after Chen Shang now. Nevertheless, Chen Shang kept his eyes shut and calmly said, yes, so what? Since they wanted to kill me, killing them in return is also normal. Humph, in the Black Tortoise mysterious realm, haven't you also crippled more than 30 true martial disciples of our free immortal sea? A middle-aged alchemist of free immortal sea once again asked. Why are you asking a rhetorical question? Whatever you want to say, just say it directly. Chen Shang was obviously not afraid of the free immortal sea since he had the extreme martial sect behind him. Then follow me to the free immortal sea to accept our punishment. The middle-aged man coldly replied. Chen Shang opened his eyes and started laughing. What if I say no, what are you going to do? While speaking, the smile on his face disappeared as his complexion had rather become gloomy and terrifying. God knows when an insidious slaughter chi covered the entire square, making everyone feel extremely frightened. Chen Shang, between you and our true martial sect, there is still unsettled business. We will settle it today. An old man fearlessly walked up to the front and said. Our beast martial sect has also been tolerating you for a long time, Chen Shang, today you have to clear everything in front of so many people. A man from the beast martial sect shouted. The sky was bright and many people had started arriving. At present, there were a lot of people as well as various other sects in the square. Chen Shang sneered, clear. Everything has long been cleared, it's just you could not accept it, that's all. If those guys had not messed with me first, I wouldn't have bothered to waste my strength. This world follows the law of the jungle. For they thought I was weak and tried to bully me, so I, in order to protect myself, did what a normal person would do. Mrs. Li was a little nervous. Much to her dismay, all the sects which had grievances with Chen Shang had come here. Indeed, it's the law of the jungle. In my eyes, you are just an ant, isn't that right? Can't I casually pinch you? A sneer came before a middle-aged man garbed in white robe from God knows from where flew up here. He landed in front of Chen Shang, and just as he appeared, an oppressive pressure was released by him, suppressing the slaughter chi released by Chen Shang. Meanwhile, the true martial sect's dean, Tang Yichao, also appeared behind the white-robed middle-aged man and angrily glared at Chen Shang. Chen Shang, with just a single glance, sensed that the white-robed middle-aged man was a Nirvana realm martial artist. He speculated that he was the free immortal sea's dean, or else why would Tang Yichao stand behind him? Dean-level characters had appeared, and their appearance was all just to attack Chen Shang. Everyone felt very powerless. Despite how much of a genius Chen Shang was, he was still an ant in front of them. Whoever dares to attack Chen Shang, I'll destroy his whole sect, I'll not spare even the fowls and dogs. A majestic and overbearing sound came, startling everyone. Perhaps only the dean of the extreme martial sect, Ji Yudongchen, could speak such words. Many had not seen Ji Yudongchen, but they all recognized the bald, Wu Kaming. Noticing Wu Kaming following a strapping young man, everyone guessed that he was Ji Yudongchen. Xiao Ziliang, it's really you. So you have founded the free immortal sea. I truly don't know where all your courage is coming from. You even dare to clamor with our extreme martial sect. Ji Yudongchen sneered at the white-robed middle-aged man. Xiao Ziliang. Information about him soon appeared in Chen Zhang's mind. Shock immediately overwhelmed him, and it was also similarly true for everyone else. Xiao Ziliang was a character of Huang Jintian's era. He was also an extreme martial sect's disciple who had once fought with Huang Jintian for the dean's position. Little Ji Yu, I'm not afraid of you, you are still too tender. Xiao Ziliang was 2 generations older than Ji Yudongchen, he was naturally not afraid. However, in this world, the strength didn't come from one's seniority. In the end, it all comes down to whose fists were bigger. Not to mention Xiao Ziliang had himself left the extreme martial sect, he didn't have a tinsy-wincy relation with the extreme martial sect. Ha ha ha, do you dare to fight with me? Ji Yudongchen said with a laugh before a golden light emerged out from his body. He released a domineering and oppressive pressure, such that Xiao Ziliang and Tang Yichao could not help but step back a little. At the same, everyone else on the square collapsed on the ground. They had been completely deterred by Ji Yudongchen's strength. They all felt that were not even as good as ants. Chen Shang, who was behind Ji Yudongchen, also felt extremely uncomfortable. He felt that, at this point, Ji Yudongchen had finally revealed all of his strength. Chapter 320, Disdaining the World. Disdaining the World. Last time in the southern wasteland, the Beast Martial Sect and the Proud Sword Sect both acted against Chen Shang. However, the materialization of perishing golden body by Ji Yudongchen made the deans realize that he was a Nirvana realm martial artist who had crossed 7 tribulations, and that was why Proud Sword Sect's Yu Zhonglin had to furiously leave at that time. This guy has crossed the 8th tribulation, that's the disdaining the world aura. If he can cross the 9th tribulation, then he can break the space and ascend to the heavenly realm. That's why it can be said that he is strongest in the mortal world. Su Meiyao was also taken aback. She could not help but marvel in astonishment. Above the tower, 2 beauties were also itching for action, but just as they were about to move, they were incomparably surprised. Is that the disdaining the world aura obtained after crossing the 8th tribulation? Very formidable. Lu Menjie, thinking of the 7th tribulation she would be crossing sooner or later, could not help but lightly sigh. For every Nirvana realm martial artist, crossing a tribulation was extremely terrifying. Menjie, you are not weak, the 7th tribulation should not be problem for you. When I was as strong as you, I was able to cross the 7th tribulation with ease. Hua Shangyu said. If Cheng Shang knew that Hua Shangyu had crossed the 7th tribulation, he would certainly be dumbfounded. He already knew Hua Shangyu was hiding a lot of secrets, but he couldn't ask anything to her. Now everyone understood why the extreme martial sect was so strong. Not only was its dean too overbearing, he was also valiant. He could shelter his own disciple from bullying. Little Ji you have actually arrived at this step already. Xiao Ziliang had a solemn expression as his eyes carried a trace of fear. He had truly underestimated Ji Yudongchen. Tang Yichao was even more frightened. Last time, when Ji Yudongchen had revealed he had crossed the 7th tribulation, it scared the hell out of him. However, he would have never expected that Ji Yudongchen was still concealing his strength. Xiao Ziliang, not to mention my Grand Master, you can't even compare with me. If my master is here, with just a single finger, he can pinch you to death. Ji Yudongchen proudly said. The aura he released had completely suppressed Xiao Ziliang, to the point where he couldn't even utter a single word. At this moment, he was in tremendous amount of pain. Ji Yudongchen's master was also one of the legendary deans of the extreme martial sect. At a very young age, he had already ascended to the heavenly realm. Indeed, if he was here, he could have easily pinched Xiao Ziliang to death with just one of his fingers. Dean, this is my business, I want to solve it myself. I also don't want them to continue to pester me. Today, we must settle everything. Chen Shang suddenly said. If this continued, the extreme martial sect's conflicts with the other sects would definitely escalate. Although Chen Shang was not worried about the extreme martial sect and the other sects, he was worried about the great battle of the 3 realms. Ji Yudongchen was indeed strong. If it was one-on-one, he was invincible in the Chenwu mainland. However, if these deans attacked together, it would be difficult to say. Since Ji Yudongchen was the strongest in the Chenwu mainland, once the great battle of the 3 realms broke out, his strength would play a crucial role in resisting those powerful devils. Good. Ji Yudongchen immediately retracted his imposing manner. Suddenly, everyone felt extremely relaxed. Underneath the stage, everyone secretly decided that, in the future, wherever they saw this guy, they would immediately run far away from him. The feeling they just had was extremely uncomfortable. Now, Xiao Ziliang also didn't dare to be so arrogant. At present, he had only crossed 7 tribulation. He certainly could not compare to Ji Yudongchen who had already crossed 8 tribulations. Although he was a character from Huang Jintian's era, he was still worried that he would die while crossing the tribulation. Because of that, he had forcefully suppressed his strength and didn't dare to advance. Unless he had the absolute certainty, he would vanish in a puff of smoke while crossing the tribulation. Good, now that's a true man. Since you want it to be like this, then we will use the most ancient way to settle our scores. How about it? Let's settle it with a fight. Xiao Ziliang said. He very much wanted Chen Shang dead. There was such a good seedling in the extreme martial sect, and if nurtured well, then in the future he would definitely become a legendary dean of the extreme martial sect. Moreover, Chen Zhang's way of conduct was also very appropriate for a dean. Not a problem at all, but if it's not fair, I will not accept it. Chen Shang replied. He could not let anyone cheat him. Especially that it was about fighting, he was not afraid at all. Our free immortal sea and the beast martial sect, the true martial sect will each send a disciple with the same cultivation as you to fight with you. If you lose, you must accept some of our conditions. And if you won, then everything is settled between us. Xiao Ziliang said. At this time, Yu Zhonglin, who was hidden among the crowd, suddenly appeared and said, "Count our proud sword sect in two." Ji Yu Dongchen sneered, "Humph, 4 guys taking turns to fight 1 guy. Win, then everything is cleared, and if lost, then be forced to do your biddings. You're extremely shameless. Honorable Nirvana realm martial artists, deans of a major sect, are unexpectedly bullying an inexperienced brat like this. In the future, the lot of you should better not mention this to anyone in the Chenwu mainland, lest you lose your prestige." Facing Ji Yu Dongchen's cynicism, Xiao Ziliang and the others blushed in shame. "Yes, it was your disciples who attacked us first. If you want it to be fair, then if Chen Shang won, you must give him an apology." Wu Keiming said. Chen Shang said, "Is an apology worth something? If I win, you must compensate me. Each losing sect must give me 100 million, how about it? If you cannot bear to compensate, then don't talk anything about settling the scores." Quite ruthless. Ji Yu Dongchen and Wu Keiming, in their hearts, secretary praised Chen Shang. The winner is right, and the losers are wrong. Although it seemed to be rather simple, it was the only way to settle the differences. Moreover, both sides could win. A fight was eventually going to happen, even if the crowd underneath the stage could not dare to cheer, they were all secretly excited in their heart. Chen Shang was not only amazing in alchemy, he was also very strong. The extreme martial sect's disciples were not oblivious to this. Those who had fought with Chen Shang didn't have a very good end. If Chen Shang lost, he had to agree to some of the conditions of those sects, it was nothing but a kind of compensation. This was very much similar to a gambling. "Are you happy?" Ji Yu Dongchen coldly said. Currently, the beast martial sect didn't have any dean, however, they still had the elders who had also arrived at the stage. Chen Shang was an alchemist. If he lost, then they could make him pay with some dance. That was rather more cost-effective. "No problem, my free immortal sea agrees," Xiao Ziliang said. 100 million for him was nothing, they just want a bit of face. They want Chen Shang to admit he was in the wrong. Although it was the free immortal sea who was truly in the wrong, they just didn't want to admit, because it would very well damage their overall prestige. The proud sword sect, the true martial sect and the beast martial sect also readily agreed. Lian Yingxiao smiled. Lu Menjie and Hua Shangyu also started smiling. Weren't they simply seeking death in fighting with Chen Shang? They were all very clear how powerful Chen Shang was. "Menjie, look, how can such a lively scene be happening without me?" Hua Shangyu naughtily smiled before flying out of the window. In the blink of an eye, she swept over to the arena. Seeing such a stunning figure on the stage, all the males were suddenly gasping for breath. Hua Shangyu rarely made appearances, but she was known to be the first beauty of the Danxiang Taoyuan. "You want to fight here?" Hua Shangyu asked with a voice carrying a sliver of anger. It was her property, and someone was casually making trouble on it. This was equivalent to looking down on her. Certainly, she would be very angry.